Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the HSR TC Podcast. I'm your host, Eris. Today I'm joined by Reens,
Hello, guys.
Sushou,
Mm.
Jas,
Hello.
Mono,
You.
and Soulfish.
Hello.
We also have a secret surprise guest popping in a little bit later. Okay. Now that the introductions are out of the way, today we'll be covering the quantum element. Everything from the basic fundamentals of it to all of the characters that fall under it. We'll be talking about each single one of them, and we'll be covering its place in the meta now that the game has been out for a significant portion of time. Let's start off with everyone's favorite hunt character. That's not really a hunt character. Seele. Who wants to? Actually, let's talk about quantum first. Like the element itself. Okay. Everyone's aware of the different elements in the game, right? You have 7 of them, right? You have ice, physical, fire, lightning, wind, quantum, and imaginary. Who wants to talk about break and why quantum break in particular is so spicy?
All right. So it's got 2 elements going on. It has a delaying effect similar to it's an imaginary counterpart, but Entanglement also has a special damage component. It has a stacking debuff that maxes out at 5, and the more stacks you have, the more damage it does. It's the only break effect where it's not only who's triggering it, but also the timing of the break that matters a lot. Because the difference between a 4 or 5 stack entanglement versus a 1 or 2 stack entanglement is enormous, especially if you have any amount of break effect, which I'll talk about in a moment, but it's quite honestly like competing for cream of the crop break effect. Like the only ones that I think could be argued to be competitive are like either Shock because of synergy with Serval and Kafka in particular, or Wind or Fire. That's 4, but Fire is more for general mobbing purposes. It's most efficient, I believe. But yeah, we'll be talking about break effect. Like one character does want to like go actual hard on break effect in most recommended builds, and a few of them do get some marginal value out of break effect, even though they don't particularly want to focus on it. So it is that stat is slightly above rate for this element in specific compared to others.
Yeah. And the way Entangle works is once you break, you apply the Entangle, and then you can stack it up to 5 times. And every stack will increase the damage that it ends up doing. Let me...
And
Don't
as
be
I mentioned,
surprised you don't rank Freeze up there with everything else.
I love
true,
Freeze.
but then this is like purely damage. Freeze is like the best one in a vacuum, but for damage, Entanglement.
So, for example, I just broke the Smara Struck Soldier. Now it's got Entanglement with 1 stack on it. Action delayed, receives quantum damage at the start of its next turn. Now every time I attack, I apply another stack of Entangle. You can see it here under the icon, so on and so forth. And then once it starts acting again, it's going to take all of that damage. There is an important distinction to make with Entanglement. Unlike some of the other break effects in the game, this one doesn't really count as DOT damage. It counts as pursuit damage, if I believe correctly. Yeah, just like that. Once the enemy target took its turn, it took all of that damage and died. Yeah. So the way you increase that damage is by, leveling your character up as far as they can go, building break effect, so on and so forth. There are some other bonuses, mainly in the SU. Sometimes you might see it in the Memory of Chaos blessings that help with damage like that. But yeah, generally those are the two consistent ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to talk about why Entangle is different and how the damage actually scales up? Sol, do you want to take this one?
Sure, but why it's different? Because Haya said so, I guess.
Why isn't it dot to start? Why would that be broken if it was dot? Let's imagine.
If it was,
I mean, because Kafka exists would be the easy answer.
Really.
but the primary thing with Entangle is that the damage of the proc, not just the break itself, actually scales with the toughness of the target. So this means it's significantly better at damaging elite and boss enemies. And the damage is linear per stack. So basically you get 0.6 times the base damage every stack. So I said that makes it better against bosses, but the delay is still valuable against smaller enemies, which that also scales on break effect, which makes it the dual purpose of both delaying enemies as well as inflicting a large chunk of damage if you stack it.
Yep. So, go on, Mono.
If you go all in on break effect, you can get similar or get close to the same delay as freeze, which is why it's close, maybe top 2 in my opinion. But the problem is I think only one character can do that realistically, and freeze does have other synergies with dots and some other interactions that I think are more valuable. So yeah, Reens was right on an earlier point.
It does go up both ways there, because freeze makes buffs or debuffs tick faster, but it also makes debuffs expire faster for generalist debuffs like defense down. So, but both are really valuable, yeah.
Yeah.
It also means that in a small amount of break effect from just substats on quantum characters can end up being actually fairly significant, more significantly the
You're kind of cutting out, Sushou.
different.
Is anyone else getting that? Or is it on my end?
Yeah.
He's pretty quiet. Cutting out a bunch.
Yeah, okay. There we go. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
Much better, yeah.
Yeah, I was, even a small amount of break effect is good for quantum characters through subsets or whatever. Much more than the equivalent would be for a character of a different element. So I wouldn't be too upset if you get a little bit of it when you're not expecting it, because it means that the proc from Entanglement can actually be a lot more significant than you think.
Okay, I think that covers Entanglement. Right? Unless there's anything else that we're missing.
One maybe small note. We might mention this in the EHR section more in depth later, but the stacking mechanic of Entanglement also depends on a character's effect hit rate and not just the initial break effect application, which can have certain implications for characters you're building break effect on.
So what you're saying is you're not guaranteed to actually get a stack up on when attacking a character that already has entanglement applied. You need a certain amount of effect hit
especially
rate.
if they have like entanglement resistance. That kind of thing.
Okay. Well, there was a change a while ago to a certain set that we all know and love and can't escape from.
Oh boy.
Yeah. How does Genius interact with Entangle? Because we know it interacts with DOT and just damage in general. So who wants to take that one? Jess, do you feel up to it?
Yeah, I can talk about this. Yeah. So back in what was it? I
1.1?
think just 1.0. I think it changed in 1.1, right?
I think
Yeah,
it was.
No, it changed in 1.2.
Anyway.
Yeah, it changed in 1.2, yeah.
Yeah, so back in 1.0 and 1.1, the defense ignore effect from the 4-piece Genius set did not apply to the damage that Entanglement dealt when the enemy reached their turn. And in 1.2, it was changed so that the defense ignore effect did in fact work for the entanglement damage, which significantly increased the value of the 4-piece Genius set on quantum characters that want to break and build break effect. So much, in fact, that at very high levels of break effect, it's actually better than the 4-piece Thief set, which was previously the best option. Additionally, the 4-piece Genius set synergizes with the quantum characters that you put it on anyway, because it gives you additional quantum damage to begin with. So overall, the 1.2 changes made it significantly better.
Poor Thief.
Entanglement.
Can't seem to catch a break. It had one niche, and then they were like, maybe not. GG, go next.
I mean, it's better than Pan Galactic.
Pan Cosmic has its uses for certain characters, at least.
I think you meant Talia.
Yeah.
Oh, that too. That's even worse off.
Pan Cosmic is actually really good on certain characters.
Yeah.
It's Talia that there's no real justification for.
If you're stacking effect hit right, might as well use it.
Jess was really quiet for a sec there. I'll up his volume maybe. Guys, come on. What is happening? Actually, wait, you're at 100%. Jess, get closer to your mic.
Hello.
No, just put him at 200.
What could possibly go wrong?
Well, he's already at 200, and people are saying he's quiet.
Am I still too quiet?
No way.
I think it's better now. But yeah.
Yeah, Talia is the break effect SU set.
Yeah, it's the one that
so
requires a ridiculous amount of stat for. And you're not even getting much for it.
Like, it wouldn't even be amazing if the requirement was 120 speed, but the 145 requirement just completely breaks it.
Yep.
From what I've seen, it's not worth it if it had no requirements.
Really? Oh, man.
Oh, no. Talia's just doomed.
Unfortunately.
That world
If they
is just
doubled the
so
break effect
unfarmable.
bonuses, maybe. Yeah, World 4.
Actually doomed.
That's fair.
Actually doomed. Okay. We've covered everything you need to know about the quantum element itself. Let's talk about the characters that are in it. As we all know, there are currently 5 quantum characters in the game that are playable, with one coming up soon that we won't be covering today because unreleased. But those characters are Seele, everyone's favorite hunt character, and the only character that actually matters in the hunt category, if you ask me. Cough, cough. You have Qingque, the quote-unquote erudition character, Clueless. Silver Wolf, Xuan, and Lynx. Let's start off with Seele. Also, just fun little bit of trivia. We have more 5-star quantum characters than 4-star quantum characters. It's amazing. Premium
Yeah.
element. Actual premium element.
Isn't Imaginary similarly premium?
Yeah,
Or is that
yeah.
not-
Imaginary has 3 characters?
Imagine it only has Yukong. That's
Yep.
it.
Yeah, 3 characters.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
Not exactly the best ratio.
yeah.
I think the 5 stars are starting to overtake for every element now.
Maybe. But yeah, let's talk about Seele. Who wants to go over her kit real quick? We're all familiar with it, but let's get a refresher course. Sushou, do you wanna take this one?
Yeah, sure. So, Seele she currently has a rerun for the next however long it lasts still, and a lot of people are still asking, has she been power crept? Is she still good? Is she worth going for? She is still very good. Like, nothing has particularly changed in that regard. There are just more characters who are good. So her skill makes her it deals damage, and it also increases her speed by a fair amount. 25% for 2 turns is a lot, and especially considering that Seele has the highest base speed in the game at 115. This is a very substantial increase, and it often means that she doesn't need as much speed as other characters do. Her talent is probably the most important part of her kit, or the most interesting part, where when she defeats a target, she will immediately gain an extra action and will also get a damage buff for 1 turn, up to 80% when it's at level 10. Extra actions are very, very strange and rare and work very peculiarly. Once you know how they work, then you can abuse them very, very easily to get essentially extra uses, quote unquote, out of your support's buffs. So this is what makes Seele very good at sort of extending buffs from other characters that would usually expire. A great example of this is Bronya's skill buff, because it's also a lot of damage percent, but it only lasts 1 turn. Not a problem when you have Resurgence active, because you can buff Seele, she defeats a target, and then she immediately gets to do it again with the same damage buff. Using her ultimate, which is just a huge, huge multiplier as well, will automatically grant you the damage portion of Resurgence, not the extra action, sadly, but it's still really, really good. So she's very consistent in that regard. And being a hunt character, she is exclusively single target, but because of Resurgence and the extra actions that you can essentially circumvent that rather large weakness that hunt characters have, which is usually being entirely single target. Seele can essentially ping pong from small enemy to large enemy, and kind of do a sort of pseudo AoE thing by just getting to act more than the enemy ever does. Bonus abilities are pretty simple. Her first one is not really that impressive. It shouldn't really ever be coming up. When her health is below 50%, she has a lower chance of being attacked by enemies. As a hunt character, she already has a lower chance of being attacked by enemies, but anyone that's ever used Tingyan knows that it's just a lie. Second bonus ability is also very, very strong. It's a very rare buff to have, which is that while she is in her buffed state, she gets 20% quantum resistance penetration. resistance penetration is a separate part of the damage multiplier, of the damage formula, which means that this often also just works as advertised. It ends up being a lot of extra damage, and it stacks fully with all the other stuff that she's likely to be getting and all the other stuff that your supports could be providing. And then I guess her final one is, it's there. There is maybe a use case for it that we might touch on later on, in a particularly cursed team setting. But using your basic attack will action advance you by 20%. So if you ever are relegated to using her basic attack, you will be able to act faster compared to if you had used her skill.
And with Seele, you are somewhat likely to be using her basic attack, whether it's just to dispatch low enemies or because, you know, SP economy things. So it's not terrible, right? It does have value. It does have use cases. And of course, it lets you access the mini nodes behind it, which are fantastic, right? Crit damage, attack, just incredibly valuable. Being a hunt character, we did cover this previously, but being a hunt character, all of the, well, not all of them, but most of the hunt options for light cones are pretty good. The issue is that not a lot of them are easily accessible. Cruising in the Stellar Sea is your baseline, realistically, right? It is the bare minimum that you should be running on your hunt characters. It's easy to get, it's free to get, and you can superimpose it to ridiculous levels. It also synergizes very well with Seele, because Seele, realistically, right, she doesn't want to be in pure single target content. She really likes being in content where there are smaller enemies on the side for her to proc Resurgence and get her buffed state off of. That synergizes with the second half of this kit, when the wearer with this light cone passive. When the wearer defeats an enemy, their attack is increased by 40% for 2 turns, which is generally enough time for her to be able to keep this up as long as there are enemies on the field for her to kill. The other thing to talk about, and this is a common question, in the night is tailor-made for her, right? It just, as Sushou mentioned earlier, she is incredibly fast. She has very high base speed. She gets speed from just using her skill. It's very, very easy to stack this on her. That's not even taking into consideration pairing her with someone like Asta, who gives a lot of speed when she ults. So that makes this light cone incredibly potent on Seele and on other hunt characters, realistically speaking, right? It's a very good stat stick in general. The other premier option for hunt light cones is everyone's favorite sort play. Reens, you're our resident sort play nerd. Why don't you tell us about this one?
Well, okay. I mean, at first glance, right, we're looking at sword play. So for anyone that doesn't know, it's a light cone. It has one very specific effect that is a damage percent increase that's stacked up to 5 times on hit. And this will reset anytime your target's changed. The fun part of it is the interaction with multi-hits. This stacks for every individual hit in a multi-hit attack. So someone like Seele, who has a 4-hit multi-hit, for example, can stack this up, can stack it up to 4 stacks in a single attack. And this is a dynamic buff. So that means each individual hit of the multi-hit gets a ramping damage percent buff. So it's not as if only your next attack is effective. Combined with the fact that it's very easy for this to be stacked up, you can just quickly keep it at max stacks, granting you pretty much the best. Like, this ranks up with 5 stars for the most part. It's like if you're at high superimpositions here, this will compete with the 5-star options. And that's the gist of it, really.
Yeah.
Now, how does the stacking work if you're switching targets? Because this does specify that it is on the same target. Now, do you
Really?
lose the stacks when you swap targets? How do the stacks interact with target switching?
Yes, and
Yes, yes, in the sense that you do lose the stacks. But like we said, since it's a dynamic buff that affects the next hit, the hit that hits your new target can get affected by a full stack. So
No, it does not. It instantly resets before it does damage.
Okay, so TLDR, if you have swordplay, especially at high superimpositions, use it. Okay. The other options, just real quick. Only silence remains. Pretty good. You are generally going to be up against low count enemies because Seele wants to be killing them. That being said, enemies do tend to summon at least 2 enemies off to the side, which means you will not be getting the crit rate bonus from this. So build your characters accordingly. Sleep Like the Dead, it is a stat stick. That's really all there is to say for it. If you got this from standard, good for you. If you didn't, don't necessarily feel like you have to buy it because, again, cruising in the Stellar Sea exists. Topaz's Light Cone, it is a stat stick as well. Seele can't make as much use of this because it is tailored for Topaz and her follow-ups, but at the very least you are still getting the base attack and the crit rate. The other options aren't particularly worth writing home about. Return to Darkness can actually be very good situationally because it specifies that after a crit hit, that means after each hit in a multi-hit as well. So the more superimpositions of this that you have, the more likely you are to dispel a buff on the target, which can come in handy against certain enemies. You're also getting a sizable crit rate buff just the entire time for having this equipped, and it also has the highest base attack out of all of the 4-star hunts, and it is fairly close to some of the 5-star options, right? It has the same basic attack as the Cruising in the Stellar Sea. So it is an option from the Battle Pass. For Seele's Relics, we kind of touched upon this earlier, but realistically, you're running Genius of Brilliant Stars. There's really no reason to not run Genius of Brilliant Stars on her. If you're still farming for it, you can do 2-piece Genius, 2-piece Musketeer, but really you just want 4-piece Genius of Brilliant Stars. For Planars, Rutilant, right, realistically. You can make do with Inert Salsato because, like Sushou mentioned earlier, her ultimate does have a very high multiplier. So it will still be buffing some of it, but your end game is going to be a Rutilant. For stats, because this is a
worth noting that space sailing is still quite good on Seele.
Oh, right.
yeah.
Effortlessly activates the speed bonus.
Yeah.
The speed requirement, and 24% attack is significant.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's still a really good option on her if you
Yeah.
don't happen to have the other 2 sets.
Yeah, it's not as bad because the majority of Seele's self buffs are damage percent, and so having more attack percent, which would prevent the kind of diminishing returns that you get from more damage percent, is actually pretty good. So if you have difficulties getting a good Rutilant set for her, but you have a good space ceiling, maybe you could just get away with that. It's pretty good.
Yep. That is a good point, because again, like we mentioned earlier, her base speed is 115, which is already 5 away from meeting the speed requirement. It's really not hard for her. The only possible maybe downside is that it is paired with Fleet, So, you might not be going out of your way to farm this for your supports. But they're both still very good options, especially earlier on in the game. Fleet gives you both survivability and a damage buff to the rest of your team. Right, going back to stats. This is a fairly common question, but you're going to want crit on your body, right? Realistically, with enough investment, you're going to want crit damage. Quantum orb, attack sphere. Now, some people ask if you should be running speed boots on Seele, particularly in the context of her signature Lightcon. The answer is no, right? You're losing out on a lot from getting the attack percent, and again, Seele has very easy access to speed just naturally, so it is not worth sacrificing attack percent boots for speed generally. There might be situations where it's worth it, but I think that's more encroaching in whale territory. Anyone want to mention anything, or do we move on?
So you say crit damage is ideal with high investment for her body piece. Generally, that's
Well,
not
I'm
good
saying-
if you have a Lightcon that has crit rate on it. If you
Mhm.
don't, then it can be pretty hard to get a decent crit ratio on her. Otherwise,
Specifically, I say with high investment, like the more investment you go down the line, the more you are going to gravitate towards a crit damage body. But yeah, that is true, right? Again, you want to have a good balance of your stats, right? You don't want to fully invest. You don't want to be running like 200% crit damage and like 5% crit rate. That's not a good look.
Yeah. As we all know, that kind of ratio is pretty pain.
Freeze moment.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about her friendly options real quick.
Well, of the 4 we currently have, all of them actually work quite well with her. But if we can just go by order, I guess. So Bronya first. So while running Seele and Bronya can end up like extremely SP intensive, so you would have to manage that. She still provides just a lot of buffs that she likes. Like Bronya is just good with basically any DPS, and Seele is no different. So, while she will burn through turn-based buffs like Bronya's ultimate very fast, she still can double dip them thanks to her resurgence, especially with Bronya's skill when killing an enemy when buffed by it. There's not really a lot to say there because it's Seele and Bronya. What else do you really need to say?
The Bellabog premium dynamic duo. Yeah, that's fair. It's also worth mentioning that Bronya is just Bronya, right? She gives you a ridiculous amount of damage buffs. She gives you a cleanse. She gives you action advance. She's just very good with damage dealers in general.
Yeah, she's almost always better than including a second damage dealer.
And that's easier, right? We're not
Yeah.
even going to scratch the surface of
No.
super expensive Bronyas. But the action advance is something that we will bring up again later. Okay, Asta.
Asta is also like, even though Seele gets a lot of speed, as we said, Asta still works quite well with Seele. There's 2 parts to this, but the first is her talent, because the talent stacks are based on Asta's own turns, so it does not actually matter how many turns Seele takes, because as it won't run out based on her turns. That means you don't even need that much speed on Asta to keep it up, for an example, and it's one of the largest attack buffs in the game as well. And her ultimate is, it's just more speed. It's just nice, but it's not like why you're running Asta with Seele most of the time, at least.
Yep, that's true.
It's not like, probably not the greatest synergy, but it still works well. So, yep.
It is worth mentioning that unless you have certain things, you might end up having another SP hungry support option in Asta, just to maintain her stacks.
Yeah, definitely gets easier to maintain them at higher Eidolons. E0, you're probably not going to sit on that many stacks if you're using skill on Seele every action.
E2 also is really, really good for maintaining stacks. And it's early, so if you have it, if you can get it, it's definitely a good option. E4 gives you ERR when you have certain amounts of stacks. Also helps because it synergizes directly with your E2. After using your ultimate, Asta's charging its stacks will not be reduced the next turn. And then E6 just lowers the number of stacks that you lose, so you can essentially just... What was it? What was the stacking for E6 Asta?
You can, since she only loses 2 stacks, then if you have a fire weak enemy, you can always keep max stacks after getting to it, because you lose 2 each turn, then you can gain 2 by using a basic attack.
Yeah. So it's skill until max and then just basic.
Yeah,
her
unless
Eidolons
you
are
want
super
more energy.
synergistic with one another.
Or break, I suppose.
Tingyun.
Tingyun is... she's also just Tingyun. Well, the buffs, the attack buff will run out quite a lot faster, meaning she won't be quite as SP positive with Seele as with other DPS a lot of the time. The extra damage and especially energy are still quite nice. Because if Seele is not able to kill enemies, she can't have 100% uptime on her buffed state, but she can also obtain it from using her ultimate, which Tingyun can help with. So it's just often better against like bosses than against a lot of small enemies, where you often will end up maybe using basic attack to just clean up, which means Tingyun buffs will run out faster, for an example.
Yeah, and again, this does go back to action advance. There is a pattern here. Okay, and finally, Yukong. There, here comes the action advance again. Okay. Yukong, she's infamous. She's been a hot topic ever since she joined. The way she works is she has roaring bowstrings stacks, and her buffs are contingent on you having roaring bowstring stacks. The way she works is these stacks will tick down once a character takes action. So, since you have 2 stacks, the 2 characters following her will have the buffs, which means you need to very finely speed tune your team so that your damage dealer or damage dealers will be the ones to get those buffs. Now, Seele is an interesting option because resurgence, inserts.
It's the same thing there, because Yukong's turn or buffs are very turn limited, and it's hard to make a DPS benefit from extra actions there because they will just run out at the end of a turn. But due to resurgence, you can potentially have up to like say 4 buffed actions from Seele, because get a kill, get another action, use your ultimate, get another kill, and a 4th one. So she can often just really go ham when Yukong's buffs are active.
Yep.
It's very strong when you get it to work, but the amount of effort to get it to work
means
It's-
that you should consider if it's worth your sanity.
For sure. Especially since we've said Seele has action ones. It's not a full one, which means you can desync it by accident potentially too.
It's
So-
very with Silly basically having both her action advance and the speed up, especially if you have cons, it's an absolute mess keeping her in sync with any sort of team. She's very difficult to speed tune in that regard because you will desync, like guaranteed after like 1 or 2 cycles.
Yeah. So I would say Yukong is probably the hardest option to work with her of her current harmonies, but she's still not a bad option to use if you manage to get it to work.
And again, like there is a certain amount of brute forcing that you can do, again, because, resurgence, say if you utilize your ult for it. The other thing is you can sometimes ensure that Seele is going to have at least some buffing through Yukong's E6, but again, that's a 4-star E6, and I'm gonna say it, those are harder to get than 5 stars. Just I'm saying it. I'm saying it right now. But yeah.
Rosaria PTSD.
So yeah, Yukong is a very high returns character, but you are required to put in the effort for it. Only you can really decide if you want to do that. Now, Nihility options. Pela. Nothing too complicated here. Pela's AoE defense shred just means Seele has an easier time killing side enemies and getting her resurgence stacks. And because, it's a debuff that's applied to the enemy, it doesn't really matter how many times Seele acts, because the debuff is always going to be there on the enemy, right, until it runs out. There's not much really to say there, I don't think.
I would maybe say that debuffers for Seele are more commonly less efficient than just buffing Seele herself. Just because, again, while Seele is very fast, having things that depend on her and having things that depend on the enemy, you kind of run into like a very similar thing to what you have with Yukong, where things can just get really messy with the turn order, and depending on how quickly Seele is going through enemies, how quickly the enemies are acting, your Nihility debuffers might not have the opportunity to refresh their debuffs in time. Especially if there's like, a new wave spawning or something. It is almost guaranteed that the first person acting in all cases is going to be Seele. So that can make it a little bit trickier for debuffers, where she could still actually have buffs rolling from the previous wave if you have harmony supports.
Yeah, that's fair. It is a fair distinction to make. That being said,
It's a double-edged sword. Like, she does enjoy probably the defense shred more than most because the fact that she's using the quantum set, right? But unlike most Seele teams, most of the damage is concentrated on Seele, right? She is a hyper carry, so she benefits more from singular buffs than like team-wide debuffs that Pela has. Who like you see her being generally more useful on like your teams with 2 DPS, like a sub DPS.
destruction moment.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's touch briefly on Silverwolf because she is coming up. She's going to get her own turn in the spotlight, but let's just talk about her real quick. Jess, why don't you talk about her in relation to Seele?
Yeah, so, well, Silverwolf her debuffs are equal opportunity. Anybody can take advantage of them, but Silverwolf has this unique weakness implant and is in fact quantum type, which can improve her synergy with Seele in specific teams where you're restricting the number of types on the team. right? There's, of course, the mono quantum team, but you can also run dual type teams, like 2 quantum, 2 imaginary, 2 quantum, 2 fire, that kind of thing. Which gives her slightly improved synergy in certain cases. But again, like Sushou mentioned earlier, Silverwolf often has a few turns between applying debuffs because her ultimate is her biggest damage increase, and that's only once every, usually about 3 turns, which means that if you get into situations where, a new wave spawns or Seele's just too fast, then sometimes things can get desynced. But overall, she's still a good option. You have to watch out for the single target nature of her debuffs. But when it works out, it's an incredible damage increase. Overall, I would recommend Pella over Silverwolf for most Seele teams, as Pella gives her generally it makes it easier for Seele to take advantage of Resurgence because she likes to snipe off the weak adds and then target a tankier enemy like the elite or boss.
Yep. Thank you for that. Sushou, do you want to touch upon Guoba real quick? We did recently say that she's Pela alternative.
Yes. For Seele specifically, because while you do benefit more ideally from Pela in these particular instances, especially because you're going to be using Genius anyway, and it's likely that you're going to be fighting actually quantum weak enemies. If you don't have access to Pela, then Guoba can actually be a pretty good alternative. The damage vulnerability is also very appreciated. It doesn't stack diminishingly with anything that Seele has herself, which means that you still get a lot of benefit from it. And it's also very easy for Gwen to maintain all of her debuffs on all enemies at the same time. And she can actually do a fair bit of damage herself if you've built her for that and you have invested in her. So for Seele specifically, lesser, but not by a huge margin, I would say.
I think one thing that really helps Gwen that you can't understate is her trace, that she's just action advanced 25% at the start of a battle, because it really kind of fixes that problem that the other debuffers have where Seele will just act first.
Yeah, getting a head start on Gwen's actual turns is very good. And especially once Seele clears the field, you can actually go very SP positive with Gwen like you can with Pela, because Guoba's basic attack with her first bonus ability will also apply a burn to the enemy, which will help perpetuate her Fire Kiss debuff, the damage vulnerability that it provides, and hopefully facilitate more SP for Seele to use. So yeah, it is very good actually.
Oh. What was that?
I believe it was a where.
It's a little Guoba.
Oh my
Yeah, big
god!
Guoba has snuck in here.
Is that him? The
It's
Guoba?
him. Yeah.
Our special guest
smile.
has arrived, guys. Everyone say hi to Guoba.
Hi to Guoba.
Hello, Guoba.
Hi, Guoba.
What the?
Oh, you don't say it. You are Guoba.
Oh, am I still peeking out on the stream?
No.
I
I
like
moved
that
you,
little
and you're in
Oh.
public. I was waiting to see if anyone would notice, but I guess people just aren't looking at their screens.
Too sneaky.
Hmm.
Stealth 100.
But yeah, to anyone that's not familiar, I don't know how you wouldn't be familiar. Guoba over here is one of the most popular Star Rail content creators on YouTube. He does some incredibly wonderful guides up there. I'm sure you guys have heard the name.
I've been a lurker since the Genshin days, so it's pretty nice to be here.
Oh, it's very nice to have you.
I remember
Now
we
tell
had
us,
a little.
Guoba, are you a fan of Qingque?
Yes,
Oh,
I love Xingque. I rushed Forgotten Hall day one so I could play her because I saw people playing her in the beta. I was like, this is way too fun to pass out on.
Wait, stream died? What?
Stream died briefly, but I think it's okay. We're
Oh,
back.
okay. Are we back?
I think so.
Guoba! God damn! Stream
So
just couldn't.
fire.
Powerful. for
The stream just couldn't handle it. Stream.
It is what it is.
Guoba used surprise attack. It was very effective.
Yeah, I just saw the bitrate spike there for a minute. I think we're back though. We're good.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
All
We
right.
stand Qingque here.
True. We do. The queen of the tiles herself. Okay. You know what?
And there's.
Yeah. Go on.
I was just saying, there's a possibility of maybe a similar QQ coming out in 1.6, but
Oh,
we'll see how she performs.
True. Our upcoming.
I need more gotcha in my gotcha. If they can keep giving me
Exactly.
gotcha characters,
Give me another QQ type character, and I will pull them.
Least gambling addicted stream.
True.
I'm literally playing another gotcha in the background, but it
Oh
was
my-
too fucking loud, so I had to turn it down.
Oh my god. Maybe we need to invest in gambling rehab over here.
An intervention? Oh no.
Okay. On that note, Guoba, since you're here, why don't you introduce us to Qingque? Tell us what she does. For those that haven't been converted.
She's I mean, I think even at E0 she's still nice. But she's like a. At the start, she was a super underrated DPS because of the RNG aspect. But basically, you flip 3 suits of tiles around, and you want to match 4 of them. And once you match 4 of them, you get a big wombo attack. And the whole gameplay of her is knowing when to use skill and like making sure you can use enough skills, because she gives some of the highest damage buffs you can get in the game on herself, despite being a DPS. She has like high damage percent than Seele. She gives attack percent. And basically, there's a lot of different ways you can abuse her RNG, so she's not actually that RNG. She's actually like a super consistent DPS, and she's more of a destruction unit, but it is what it is.
That's what we were alluding to earlier with the erudition remark. She really just does not play like an erudition character.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Okay, well, you mentioned the RNG bit and how to manipulate that. Why don't you guys elaborate, you and Sushou, since you're the resident Qingque experts?
Well, I had a bit of a blunder early on when the game launched because I was part of the closed beta and I wrote some words on Qingque back when that was still a novel thing. And I was wrong. I was very wrong about pretty much everything that I wrote, and I've been making amends ever since. And that is why every single time that I go to stream, I have E6 Qingque. I have the potential to get to E6 Qingque, but I never do because I need to prove to people that she really is just that good and is worth your time even at E0. Guoba mentioned that the damage percent that you can get is insane. At max level of her skill, so essentially every time that you use her skill, you get 1 stack of a damage buff. And you can stack this up to 4 times. It's 28% at level 10. And with her second bonus ability, that gets improved by an extra 10% per stack. So if you have 4 stacks, you have a 152% damage bonus on your next
Yep.
attack. It's unreal and very unreasonable. it is usually unlikely that you'll be needing to use her skill that many times unless you're catastrophically unlucky. But yeah, it's.
I mean, it does help mitigate the RNG, right? It's like a pity.
Yeah, it ends up being quite good still, and because of the we'll come back to the specific extra turn thing because it does function like Seele's. Every time you draw, you get an extra turn, so there are plenty of buff shenanigans that you can do with that. But why don't you mention? Why don't you talk about the bad luck sort of prevention that you mentioned, Guoba?
Yes, please. I need
like-
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like she has such a high probability at like 3 skills that you can kind of get it every turn, but also like as long as you got fast teammates, they generate a tile every time they take a turn. So it's kind of like you're going to start with 3 tiles every QQ turn anyway. And I think 3 tiles, you have over 70% probability of hitting 4 of a kind in 3 skills. And like 4, you get like 90%. So you're kind of going to hit it every turn. But I like running like a Pella to generate skill points and tiles. And then you can bring Bronya with the E1S1 if you're a real whale. And you just generate a lot of skill points and a lot of tiles for her. And she pretty much can get that hidden hand state whenever you want it. The real juice is also getting the autarky as well, but that's like you just have to get lucky on top of getting lucky, I guess.
We love gambling inside our gacha game. Another interesting thing, something that I also always try to bring attention to whenever people ask, whenever I go to do like Memory of Chaos, is how you can essentially double dip with the ultimate. And this is something that in Guoba's recent video, which you should definitely watch if you haven't seen it. There is a mention of how to correctly utilize Qingque's ultimate for maximum benefits, and it honestly brought a tear to my eye when I finally saw somebody talking about how to correctly use Qingque's ultimate. So please elucidate the masses.
Yeah, so I mean, back in 1.0, it was kind of lit to just burst the ult, and then suddenly you have a hidden hand state like on a second turn. But these days, you want to do massive damage. You get hidden hand state when you want it anyway. So it's like you want to ult before your enhanced basic. Basically, when you get the 4 of a kind, you have the hidden hand state, which is at level 10, I think, like a 72% attack buff. If you throw away your 4 of a kind in your enhanced basic, it removes your attack percent buff. So if you ult before, you get that 72% attack buff on your ultimate, on top of all those skill damage percent, of course. And then you don't actually want the ultimates like 4 of a kind. When you ult, it gives you 4 of a kind. You don't want that because then you're not going to use your skill on your next turn. You're going to have an enhanced basic with 0 damage percent instead of like a 70 to like 100 damage percent that you'd normally get.
I could cry. It's so beautiful. So, because of that, you can end up dealing a lot of damage to a lot of enemies all at once, and it makes the upfront multipliers that you see on Qingque's abilities on her, even in her enhanced basic, and especially her ultimate. You see these numbers and you think, there's no way she should be doing this kind of damage, right? But it all adds up, and it ends up being really, really impressive. And yeah, surprisingly consistent. Especially when you have certain teammates, which we will probably get to shortly.
Yep. But before that, let's quickly talk about her build, because that is a very important topic. There is a certain amount of nuance in there. So for light cones, it's pretty straightforward, right? Peaceful Day is really, really good. The only downside is that it's BP exclusive, so you'd have to buy it. Series of Breakfast is the next best option, for 4 stars, and it does have the benefit of being completely free to play. You can get it as a drop from weekly bosses, from Echo of War. You can get it from the Memory of Chaos shop in front of the Forgotten Hall entrance. And then the premier 5-star option would be Before the Dawn. Sushou, why don't you talk about this one?
So, if you have this, you've been playing for some time, and it is quite good. The way that it kind of interacts, it's just a very consistent bonus that you can get. The crit damage is obviously very, very nice as well, especially because with the kind of damage numbers that you're getting just casually anyway, having 36% extra crit damage is really, really strong. You don't really benefit from the skill damage percent because your skill doesn't deal any damage, but 18% extra damage on the ultimate it's good. It stacks diminishingly if you have a lot of the skill damage percent already, but I mean, hey, every little helps. The real juice, the juice that Guoba was alluding to earlier as well, is when you are at E4 Qingque or above, because then you have a follow-up attack and you can actually make use of the second part of Before Dawn, and having an extra 48% damage multiplier, 48% extra damage on that follow-up attack just means that the first one is going to destroy everything, and then whatever's left over is going to be destroyed by your immediate follow-up attack. And it's a 5-star, so it has the 5-star stats. It's just a fantastic option if you have it.
So one thing that's important to note is that if you kill something before her enhanced autarky attack happens, it just disappears.
It is pretty sad when that happens.
So when you have it, try to attack something that won't die to the first basic, yeah.
Which, at high levels of investment, can actually be kind of difficult.
Yeah.
Qingque sounds very suspiciously like a destruction character.
Yeah. Oh, I do actually want to point out another potential option that is definitely a lot harder to obtain, but could also be quite good. Perhaps Guoba could tell us about Genius's Repose.
Yeah, I was going to chime in about that. I mean, it's on par with Before Dawn if you have its uptime permanently, which for a 4-star Lycone is pretty ballin'. Thing is, Qingque is all about those burst turns, so I actually don't think the uptime is that hard to get. Like, your first turn, you won't be getting the bonus, so it's a bit sad, but as long as you're killing one every 3 turns, which is, kind of expected with a Qingque, especially in like a hyper carry team, then you're getting a giant crit damage buff. And she doesn't have crit damage, she doesn't have any crit traces, and she has so much attack percent buff, so much damage percent buff, so they're super saturated. So crit and enemy modifiers are so good for her, and that's why Before Dawn and Genius are very good options for her.
It's also, like you mentioned, because of the 3-turn duration, depending on how else you choose to abuse the extra turn mechanic that you have inherent in her skill, you can end up having Qingque just permanently buffed from multiple different sources, and it's just never going to run out because enemies are going to continue to die when you just look at them.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, well, that was definitely a Genius's Repose. Okay, so for her relics, guys, Genius. There's a lot of genius going on here. Genius of Brilliant Stars, just genius. Just go for genius. Planars. I think there might be an argument for inert Silsado at high Eidolon Qingque, but realistically, you're aiming for Rutilant. It's the consistent option. It's the one that you're always benefiting from. Do you guys want to elaborate on her gearing options real quick? Anything you want to add?
No, I think it is pretty cut and dry for Qingque. It
Pretty
is kind
simple.
of
She's
rutilant.
yeah.
Nice. Okay. Rutilant. Get Rutilant. Rutilant. Good.
Yep.
I will note, like Guoba said, because she doesn't have any like crit minor traces, it can be quite challenging to reach the 70% requirement for Rutilant. So it is going to be kind of like a bit of an investment gap to get to there, but it is kind of the strongest option that you should go for. You can cope with Celsoto. I mean, we talked about how you can make the ult deal colossal damage, so having an extra 15% on that is okay, I guess, but the big one is her enhanced basic, so
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think that's all for her gearing options. We did briefly touch upon her stats, which ties into her support options, right? Because you're going to want specific things for her. Sushou, why don't you start us off here? Let's go over the
Okay.
harmony options.
well. Do I have to start in order?
No, you can start with whichever one you prefer.
Okay. Now, depending on your account, depending on how your Bronya looks, and the gear and Eidolons of her, Bronya could be a very, very strong option for Qingque. Having, the action advance is kind of, I mean, maybe it's a little bit finicky because you really have to consider your skill point economy when attempting to run Bronya with Qingque, because they both want skill points, and especially because immediately upon using Bronya's skill on Qingque, it is now her turn. So you need to try to have enough skill points to get her enhanced basic. Otherwise, you're just going to be throwing an unenhanced basic with like 2 damage buffs, and you're going to be real sad about it. And it gets more viable as you have as both you get more Eidolons for Qingque, especially if you get to E6. Or if you get more Eidolons for Bronya, or if you have, but the battle isn't over. If you have these things, then the skill point efficiency becomes a little less of a problem, especially at E6 Qingque, because she'll recover potentially 2 SP every single time she launches an enhanced basic attack if she also has the autarky follow-up to go. Bronya is really, really strong for Qingque. She also gives the attack percent and the crit damage, which is also very important, from her ultimate. But it can be... It's kind of a baller comp. If you can make it work, it's baller. If you can't make it work, you're probably not going to be very happy. There's also the rabbit hole of the various different types of Bronya that you can run, where, skill spam, alternating, the fabled hyper Bronya some of us can dream. It can get complicated. But if you have a certain amount of skill points and you know that you can, win within that time, especially if you have Qingque's ultimate to guarantee you the matching tiles during her turn, you can, and again, circumvent the bad luck and just immediately have everything buffed by that. Then having Qingque's own damage percent buffs, the attack percent buff potentially from her hidden hand, the damage percent and the attack percent and the crit damage from Bronya, you're going, like, the enemy is going to forfeit, basically, because getting hit by that is certain death.
It just sounds like she's one of those characters where she really scales up. Like the more you invest in her.
For sure.
KQM says invest in your Qingque. Do it. Now.
Official endorsement.
Right.
I mean,
Now.
don't. we
I mean,
do
you're
this
just gonna
every
regret it.
time?
Let's be honest. Here she is, quite strong.
That is true. She is very strong. Okay. Which one do you want to talk about next?
I think we could maybe talk about. Who would you say, Guoba? Would you say Tingyun is a good one to talk about?
Qingque?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, her attack percent is like kind of whatever compared to like what it could do for others. But the energy is like, I mean, the energy is nice for the ult combo. Yeah, I think Tingyun's just good on any team. That's kind of the problem with talking about her. It's kind of the same thing. She's kind of OP. E5 Tingyun, I think, shaves off 2 actions. E6 can shave off 3. So you can get like a 3-turn ultimate Qingque, which is pretty big for AoE fights. But I'm a Yukong lover, unfortunately. So I'm kind of, I really like Yukong. But I don't think Yukong will be beating Tingyun for the team.
Holy crap. I didn't expect you to be so goddamn based.
I love the Yukong.
Before I let you talk about Yukong, I do just want to mention for Tingyun, you're absolutely right. She's good for everyone, because who doesn't love energy and attack percent and damage percent? This is where the extra turn shenanigans really can start to be impressive. And this will also come up when we go back to Asta. If you use Qingque's skill and you don't get lucky, you'll see that her icon in the turn order in the top left has a little plus instead of a dot, which signifies that it's an extra action. If at this stage you choose to use Tingyun's ultimate on Qingque, you essentially get an extra use out of it. Because technically, Qingque's real turn has already ended. So you get to send your attack out, and then it'll be someone else's turn. You go to inspect Qingque, and you still see 2 turns remaining. So, depending on how quickly Tingyun gets her ultimate back, you can potentially keep Qingque buffed permanently with the ultimate, which can be really, really strong.
Yeah, the fact she can do it on every single turn of hers is kind of cringe. Blade has to wait 4 turns. Seele has to get a kill, but Qingque just does it whenever she wants, like literally any turn.
It's so unbalanced.
Yeah, I'm waiting for them to do another character like this that can abuse it, but maybe they won't. Maybe they've seen it's a mistake.
You think they learned a lesson?
They probably
Maybe.
might not, because like
Oh, no.
Donhang using skill doesn't count as doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine he could double buffs.
Oh my
Holy.
goodness.
Mistakes.
Okay, well, Guoba, why don't you talk about Yukong?
Well, for a meta, like, should you invest in Yukong for your Qingque? I don't think so, but it's like, I just love the crit buffs Yukong gives for Qingque. She's like really lacking on the crit.
Hmm.
And I mean, she can generate skill points. Well, ideally you have E6 Yukong, and then you're balling. And then you can do Qingque's full combo and just Yukong ult at the start of Qingque's combo, and everything just dies. But I think, yeah, Tingyun's energy is so clutch in some situations where you can do like 3 skills, but you haven't got your ult. Qingque gets you your ult. Now you have your enhanced basic, and you don't waste 3 skill points out of nowhere. But I like Yukong for dual DPS stuff. I like running Qingque with Herta, but that's a me thing. I don't know.
You're
If it's,
so based. You're so unbelievably based.
Guys, I swear we didn't clone Sushou for this stream. I
I
swear.
do the same thing.
Oh
you
my
did Qingque
God.
Herta?
Yeah, it's so
Did you
good.
with Yukong?
Yeah.
Oh my god. I put it in my Qingque video because I was like, this is a Guoba favorite team.
It's just so much fun. Like,
It is.
oh no, the enemy's like, haha, I live with 1 HP, and Herta's like, but did you though?
Yeah.
No,
Bonk.
no, dog. You did.
Actual same brain cell moment. That's amazing.
They're sipping the same Kool-Aid here. Not good.
There must be something in the water.
Qingque Herta players be like. Okay. Nihility. I don't think there's really much to
Asta?
Didn't we already talk about Asta?
I think so.
I don't
I-
believe
I
so.
mentioned her.
Well,
Yeah, we kind
Fair
of glossed over the fact that she has a lot of attack percent.
okay.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. A kind of similar thing to Tingyan, where with Asta's ultimate, you can also do the buff extension technique by using it after Qingque has already used her skill once.
Wait, but that doesn't matter because that doesn't even tick down on the turn anyways.
Yeah, it's true.
Yes, but it makes me feel cooler when I do it. Having increased speed can actually be quite important in certain situations. Qingque likes going for a lot of damage, and depending on your personal preference, I mean, I don't know how Guoba might feel about this, but I tend to run my Qingque with attack boots rather than speed boots.
Oh, really?
I like attack boots. I forgot to put it in the guide, and I got so many comments. It was insane. Because I put in my speed guide as well that you can go attack boots Qingque. I put in my first Qingque guide. You can put. I just forgot to say it here. But yeah, attack boots Qingque is legit. It's just like one problem I have with it is if you're not running Bronya. I mean, if you have a team built around it, it's great. But if you just plop her attack boots in a team and you have like, I don't know, I have a super fast Pella with tutorial 2-turn wind. She's gonna generate too many tiles. She's gonna get on Qingque's turn. She's gonna have no skill uses.
Yeah,
But yeah, attack beats Qingque is great. Yeah, I kind of effed up on that one.
it's all good. But that is definitely a real issue when going with attack boots, is being both too slow for the rest of your team, where, like Guoba just mentioned, you can end up automatically getting her enhanced basic when it comes to her turn, which is bad because you want to use skill, or you're too slow for the enemies and you get one attack while the enemy gets like 3, and you're like, I just want to throw tiles at you. And Asta does, if you are somebody who does go for attack boots and you're not a masochist, then Asta is a very good choice for that, because giving 50 speed to everybody, including Qingque, means that you both keep speed values between teammates closer together.
Yep.
And it also means that you're not, constantly being outsped by the enemy as well. The attack bonus from charging is nice. It's excruciatingly difficult to maintain in a Qingque team, though, unless Asta is at E6, I would say. Because you don't really have the skill points to spare on Asta. You kind of want to keep them for Qingque when possible. So it is something that gets easier as you get more Eidolons on Asta. If you have Asta alongside another Harmony and you do like a double Harmony setup for Qingque, then it is possible to maybe circumvent that SP cost. But in general, she's probably the lesser of the other Harmony choices available for Qingque. but still usable if you have nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've personally noticed the speed boots, the lack of speed boots when playing Qingque, because my other options tend to have a lot of speed. She just never gets to use her skill.
Yeah,
base
same here.
speed
I do
Qingque.
personally prefer speed boots on her for that reason. Because I often get to her skill and she has 3 tiles, and then I can skill once, and then I'm missing out
Yeah.
on a lot of her damage.
And she does still do a lot of damage with her with speed boots. Though yeah, obviously attack boots are just going to be more damage. At the end of the day, I guess it does depend on the team and everyone's favorite game mechanic, speed tuning. God, I don't want to think about doing a speed podcast. Okay, well,
Oh boy.
since we're on the topic of speed versus attack boots, let's just go over her other stats as well. Like these two mentioned earlier, she has a lack of crit traces and just crit sources. So realistically, that's going to be the main sticking point in your build, just balancing your crit. Especially when accounting for Brutland Arena's very high 70% crit requirement. You probably end up running crit rate body, especially because the only other crit light cone options are crit damage. It's easier to get crit damage from those on her than it would be crit rate. Because she does have a lot of damage percent built into her kit and just sources elsewhere. Attack percent orb does apparently end up being valuable. Jess, why don't you talk about that one?
Yeah, so specifically if you're using speed boots on Qingque, attack orb can be a really good option. And in some cases, depending on your light cone, it can even be better than a damage orb. You're always going to be using attack rope, right? And if you're using speed boots, then you only have one attack main stat on Qingque. She does get a sizable attack buff from Hidden Hand, her enhanced basic attack. I believe it goes up to 77% at max talent level. But she gets even more damage percent from her skill if you stack it multiple times. And in her optimal teams, especially if you're using speed boots, you get to use her skill a lot of times. So in that case, attack orb is often a larger damage increase, and it only becomes better if you have a light cone like Before Dawn or Peaceful Day, because they both give sizable damage percent increases. So specifically in that case, attack orb is actually a really good option, and you should not discount it, especially if you get really good crit rolls on it, for example, to meet your arena stat requirement.
Jess is as loud as I can turn him up.
Am I
Can't.
still too quiet? I'm as close to my mic as I can get.
Eat it.
Nom. Yeah, Jess is at max, so there's not much I can do on my end.
Yeah, my apologies. Let me see if I can turn myself up.
Okay. While he does that, any other additions that we want to go over for her stats?
Energy rope is cope.
Hey,
Stop
that
asking me
rhymes.
about it.
Dude, we have to answer this question every single time this character comes out.
It's
No.
don't do it, please. Just accept that you're going to have to go back in to World 7, and you're gonna have to pray to actually get a good rope that's attack percent. I don't care that your ER rope has, crit rate and crit damage on it. we all know it's not going to roll into those stats. It's gonna get defense at the first one, and then it's gonna all roll into that.
Yep, you are going to be 5 energy short of your burst, ult, whatever, a lot.
Yeah,
Deal with it.
there's no breakpoints that you'll ever meet with this. It's just, if you want more energy, bring Tingyan. That's just, yeah.
I feel so called out right now. Me when double crit, where crit.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
I think we went back to Asta and then went back to stats. So I think we
Yeah.
actually still have some Nihility ones to go over.
Yeah.
Some teammates. Yeah.
I don't think there's too much to go over there. But okay, why don't you start us off, Sushou? Pick a card, any card.
Okay, so Kafka. No,
Okay, Sushou's banned from the stream. Say goodbye.
No.
Oh no, the second ban. Oh no.
I think
We get
I'll
everyone
probably-
banned by the end of it.
I'll probably leave Guoba to talk about Palo because he's probably better at explaining it than I am. So instead, I'll
Thought you
gush
were about
about
to say
Gwen a bit
Who's
more.
gonna get banned?
Gwen is another option that you can bring. It kind of has a similar sort of issue to what we mentioned with Asta, where to fully make use of everything that she has to offer, you will probably want to spend some SP on her, but you don't need to spend it as frequently. As long as enemies have a burn on them, then when they take damage from that burn, they will accrue Fire Kiss stacks, which means that you don't really need to be using Gwen's skill every single turn. So you can kind of do the initial setup and then coast for the most part, potentially even doing just basic attacks when the enemy count goes low enough. And yes, again, it's going to be a recurring thing throughout the quantum throughout this podcast. All the quantum characters pretty much love Genius of Brilliant Stars. If you're using a quantum character, there's a high likelihood that you're against a quantum weak foe, which means that Genius's defense ignore gets even better, which means that more defense reduction is going to be even betterer. But Gwenifen's damage vulnerability is, again, a separate part of the damage formula, which means that it works very well in tandem with all of Qingque's just ridiculous buffs and ridiculous numbers that she has on those buffs. So she can still contribute, she can still improve Qingque's damage quite significantly by herself, and also contribute some good damage of her own, especially if, like, there's fire weak enemies or something, then Gwenifen could actually be one of the better choices.
Don't build crit on Gwen.
Don't build crit on Gwen.
Do
True.
it.
Or Pela, for that matter. Speaking of
I'd
Pela.
build crit on my Pela.
Oh my god.
Oh no.
We've lost him. We've lost him.
I have a E6 on wind and I do crit Pela.
Okay, E6
Wind.
we'll allow.
Okay.
It's for fun. I mean, I don't think it's, you should build for it, but I had so many wind crit pieces.
Okay. Well, on that note, why don't you talk to us about Pela and your interesting build?
The crit thing you can ignore, but yeah, like Sushou was saying about the def reduction. Def reduction is exponential, so the 20% you're normally getting from Genius, I think, is like a 12% DPS increase. If you add the Pela ultimate, you're suddenly the def reduction giving you a 45% DPS increase, which multiplies with all those damage percent, attack percent buffs you're already getting. So Pela's really good. She's fully skill point positive unless you're playing on auto. So she's just really great. And the AoE Death Shred, I mean, I prefer the AoE Death Shred over single target Death Shred personally when I'm running Qingque. So because having every enemy just like have like a 40% DPS increase for your Qingque on her attacks every single enemy for her ult or the 3 enemies for her basic attack, enhanced basic attack, it's just way too good to pass up on. Sometimes she can generate too many towers if she's super fast and like you're on the attack boots, but otherwise she's just super good for Qingque.
Okay, and what was that about running Windset on Pela?
Yeah, when you have tutorial Lycon on her, she can get a 2-turn, 2 basic rotation at talent level 7, I believe, and energy rope. So Windset actually becomes super good on her because every 2 turns you're getting a 25% advance forward. So you're just generating so many bonus actions over the fight. It just means you can generate skill points even more frequently. She gets so many actions, and sometimes it can mess you up if she goes twice before you Qingque and you generate an extra tile, but most of the time it's a free skill point and Qingque loves those.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. Would you recommend running 4-piece Wind on Pela?
If you're going 2-turn, yeah. You don't have to. It's just like, why not abuse it? If not, you just go like 2 hacker, 2 defensive. And if you're going 3-turn, you do that anyway.
Okay, fair enough. You briefly touched upon single target debuff or defense shred, and well, that's pretty much Silverwolf, unless we start talking about pearls. I don't think there's like too much to mention here. It's very similar to what we said about Silverwolf with Seele. Single target defense shred, weakness implant, they're both quantum, so you know it's you have an easier time making sure quantum is on there. Anything else we want to point out about this?
I suppose the weakness implant is something that is potentially noteworthy depending on what you're against, depending on like the specific content. If, for example, a sort of niche situation where you're against the sort of a two elite encounter, one of the elites already has a quantum weakness, but the other one doesn't, then Silverwolf could be very useful in that situation to implant a quantum weakness with her skill onto the enemy that doesn't have it, thus further boosting the effectiveness of Genius of Brilliant Stars, and then compounding that with her own 45% single target defense reduction to really ruin that guy's day.
Yeah, it's really just quantum triple dipping there on the defense. It's really nice.
The only thing, of course, is that, yeah, having Silverwolf be exclusively single target, we'll touch more on Silverwolf soon, but in the situations where Qingque really, really, really starts to pop off, even though she's already very, very good in single target situations as well, but having Pela to debuff the entire enemy can result in approaching the fabled Qingquillian damage.
Oh god.
But if you need the weakness implant, then Silverwolf is, but she has to be a go-to. She's the only one that can do it.
Yep, that is true. I think that covers all of her teammate options, right? Is there anything else we want to talk about with Qingque before we move on?
You don't need E6 for Qingque to be good. You don't need
Sure.
E4 for Qingque to be good.
Yeah.
Please use E0 Qingque. You will be pleasantly surprised. I guarantee it.
Do I need to make a separate line for that?
Oh, please, there's not enough space on the screen. Also, go watch Guoba's video on Qingque.
Sub, please.
Yes.
I'm broke. I'm going to be homeless next month.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Poor Guoba. That's okay,
I'm
Guoba.
joking.
We always have a place for you here.
Oh, thank you.
Adopt your
I'll
local
live in my
Guoba.
laptop screen. Yeah. Donate to your local Guoba shelter.
Yep, and you can do that by heading over to his channel and liking and subscribing. Definitely recommended.
Shameless plug.
Plug.
It's
plug,
okay.
plug.
It doesn't count if we're doing the plugging.
Sure.
So if we watch the video, he becomes homeless.
Oh,
Sure. Why not? Okay. I think that's all for Qingque. It's time to talk about everyone's favorite gamer, who canonically uses gamer language. She has a gaming ritual, guys.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah, so-
she's a degenerate. She's
She
a
has
lost cause.
only one gaming ritual.
She's probably a streamer in her free time, you know.
True.
Well, we already have the streamer. Let's not encroach on that territory. Not yet, at least.
But what if they collab?
Oh God, collabing. No, that would actually work. Look at Gwenifen's Eidolons. She can so easily be like collabing with a Stellaron hunter.
Oh, don't give them ideas.
She would totally do that.
Committing felonies left and right.
Yes, her favorite street trick.
Okay. Silverwolf. Jess, why don't you kick us off here?
All right, Silverwolf. She's my favorite character in the game. Definitely not biased. So let's start with her skill. It's her most unique feature and really usually the thing that you bring her in the team for. It allows her to implant a weakness on an enemy. Currently, there's no other way to do this in the game outside of a single curio in Simulated Universe. And this can really shake up team building a lot of the time. So the skill will implant one weakness that is not on the enemy already, that is in your current party. And the way it works is it takes all of the weaknesses in your party and weights them equally, and then chooses one in there that's not on the enemy and implants it. Or it attempts to implant it, right, if you succeed the roll. And this plays into her stat requirements later. She'll need a good bit of effect hit rate to make this work all the time. Additionally, this implant will reduce the enemy's resistance to the type implanted by her skill by 20%. And also, it will, if the enemy has enough debuffs on them, it will. Sorry, that's one of her bonus abilities. Her implant will also reduce all type resistance by 10%, like for no matter what weakness she implants. And later on, when you unlock one of her bonus abilities, if the enemy has multiple debuffs on them, it will reduce resistance by another 3%. So this actually, in addition to the weakness implant, can increase damage against an enemy by a very significant amount if they don't already have the weakness. Her ultimate is really simple. It's just a big hit that applies 45% defense reduction. That's all it does. It does a lot of damage if you happen to be building her for damage, but generally that's not the primary focus. Her talent, it allows her to implant these little bugs, which are small debuffs. There's one that reduces enemy attack, one that reduces enemy defense, and one that reduces enemy speed. There's a chance to apply these every time Silverwolf attacks an enemy. These are nice little bonuses, but they're not super significant. They're just extra. They're nice to have. I mentioned one of her bonus abilities earlier, but the other two, her first one, her A2, extends bug duration and also gives her a chance to apply a bug on an enemy when they are weakness broken. She doesn't have to do this weakness breaking. If any character on your team breaks an enemy's weakness, the chance to apply this bug will be rolled. And this also does scale with her own effect hit rate. Her Ascension 4 is also really simple. It just increases the duration of the weakness implant, which can really help with her rotations because she won't have to use her skill as often with this active. That's pretty much it for kit breakdown.
So
Sorry?
it is important to note that the A4 does not affect the duration of the resistance, though.
That's true. Yeah. The enemy resistance reduction only lasts 2 turns, and so you'll have a period where the enemy still has a weakness for 1 turn, but doesn't have the resistance reduction. So that can matter in certain cases where you're trying to get absolutely the most damage out of her.
Any additions?
Nope.
Okay. Let's go over her building options because she does have a few builds. She has 3 really. For light cones, right? Everyone's aware. If you have Silver Wolf, you were around during that time. She does have a signature 4-star before the tutorial mission. Right, these are characters. Oops. Before the tutorial mission starts. And realistically, you're going to be running this a lot of the time, most of the time. That being said, if you are pulling her at a later date and you don't have this, what are your other options? Well, much like Palo, her other options include Resolution, Shines as Pearls of Sweat, more Defense Shred. We'll touch upon this, but Silverwolf does naturally want a lot of effect hit rate, so that ties into applying this. In addition to that, because she wants a lot of effect hit rate, Eyes of the Prey at high superimpositions does become an option, purely because of the effect hit rate that you get from it. Who wants to talk about the 5-star options real quick?
Isn't it just Incessant Rain, though?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But I mean, we do
Yeah,
need to
she-
say
she is a little
why.
limited.
Can work, but
It's great on her. The only problem is you ideally want E1. You want to use Incessant Rain, otherwise the rotation is just it's kind of annoying with her, unless you start using more skills. That's why tutorial is so good. You get the 3-turn rotation, so she has pretty much full uptime on the important stuff. You can't get a 2-turn rotation until E1 for the resistance, and I didn't think you even want to get that. The problem with Incessant Rain is it's like really nice, but it's the energy for Silver Wolf is so important on tutorial that ideally you have E1 to not need the energy from tutorial, and then you can start using Incessant Rain, and then it's a really strong light gun.
Yeah, there's kind of not like a huge number of good alternatives. Maybe if we're lucky, they'll end up rerunning, giving away to sort of reacquire before the tutorial mission
Surely.
starts.
Surely.
Surely, yeah.
Surely it will never
Um,
become BIS again, like a certain weapon in Genshin many years later.
Plural. Weapons, plural.
Plural.
Um,
Albedo mains in shambles every
Ugh.
time.
Actually,
Ain't
in
no
shambles.
way.
Before the tutorial mission starts, like genuinely is that good. Nihility characters right now, as sort of like context, they kind of fall into one of 2 groups, which is either they deal damage over time, or they specifically have debilitating debuffs to like buff other characters, or their welt.
I was about to say. I was about to say.
Or their welt.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is that a lot of these light cones are tailored to one of these 2 sides. And if you like, before the tutorial mission is just such a good way of getting of completely like fixing your effect hit rate needs as well as addressing your energy requirements as well for Paler and for Silverwolf, that if you don't have it, I can only really say I'm really sorry. The problems with Incessant Rain, well, not necessarily problems, but the caveats to attempting to utilize it mean that if you don't go for this and you don't go for E1 Silverwolf, then I would say don't use a 5-star option, because the other 3 5-star light cones are they're not designed for that type of Nihility character. In the Name of the World is specifically for, I mean, it's designed for Welt. It's supposed to be for somebody who deals damage, and while it will help you with landing Silverwolf's weakness implant, it doesn't do anything for the rest of her kit, which ends up being not that great for her. The attack increase as well. Silverwolf, unless you really, really enjoy her, and you have a lot of her Eidolons, is not a particularly impressive source of damage either. The same goes for solitary healing. The break effect could be nice. It is somewhat likely that you're going to be breaking with Silverwolf, because her weakness implant, assuming it is, quantum, will immediately deal the increased toughness damage, which is very good. Her ultimate is single target, so it deals even more toughness damage. It is likely that you're going to break enemies, but you don't benefit from the energy regen because you need to have the enemy die with a dot on them. Entanglement doesn't actually count for this, which is really, really not fun. So she can't use this. And then Kafka's signature light cone it's the same thing. It's built for damage. It's not really designed for you in any way. The speed is nice, I guess, but like erode maybe. If you really don't have any other options and you don't have before the tutorial mission starts, I'd suggest, what the ones we've already talked about. Just fall back on Eyes of the Prey if you really have nothing else. The effect hit rate will be useful for you. Or Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat, which is probably the next, probably the best overall choice if you have neither energy problems nor effect hit rate problems.
Yep,
oh, and an important thing to note about Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat, because this is something that also comes up, and I'm sure you've also had this question every so often, Guoba, is the lower superimpositions of Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat are, like, I think S3 is the point at which it becomes a reasonable, that it starts to require a reasonable amount of effect hit rate.
Yeah, S2 is like 140 effect hit rate.
S1 is even worse.
Yeah, S1 is 178. I don't know how many hits she has because it's per hit, but yeah, it's still a lot at S1.
I think for Silverwolf, her ult is technically only a single one, even though the enemy flinches multiple times. I think Jas can fact check me on that.
Yeah, her ultimate's 1 hit, her skill's 1 hit, her basic is 3. So it actually works pretty well with her basic, because she'll be doing that most of the time when I debuff her build.
Pretty
But
good,
yeah,
then.
at low superpositions, it's pretty painful.
And again, the single target limitation really can hurt this if you're not in like boss scenarios.
Absolutely.
Mood. So yeah, realistically, before the tutorial mission, if you don't have one of these two, not much else to say there really. For her relics, if you're bringing her along just for the implant, just for the debuff and the various utilities that she brings, I don't think you prioritize going for a damage option here. Jess, why don't you talk about her relic options here?
Yeah, so this kind of ties into stats as well, based on her build. So if you're doing just a debuff for Silverwolf, right? You're like E0 and you have tutorial or whatever. You can go for break effect Silverwolf. And this is getting into stats, but break effect Silverwolf is particularly efficient because she has very high toughness damage, right? Her skill is 2 units of toughness damage. Her ultimate is 3, and it's all on a single target, so you can almost guarantee that she's able to break an enemy. Additionally, she can implant the quantum weakness to make sure that she's able to break the enemy. And in that case, you basically have 2 options for relic sets. You can either go with Thief or with Genius. We talked about this a little earlier. Before 1.2, Thief was better. After 1.2, they're basically even. Below a certain level of break effect, Thief is slightly better, and above a certain level of break effect, Genius is slightly better. But both of them work well. For Planars, you just want to use one of the support sets generally, because she's going to be her purpose in the team is increasing a damage dealer's damage, because her own damage is not that significant. So you want to use something like Fleet or Keel. Don't use Talia, please. Even if you're doing Break Effect Silverwolf, it's not worth it. Also, don't use Sprightly Von Whack. That set is bait for Silverwolf. There are certain, quote, rotations where it seems like it would be useful on her, but in practical scenarios, the extra 5% energy regeneration rate is not really going to make a difference. And either you should just be using energy rope or not. Yeah, so for relic sets, it's pretty simple. Even if you are building damage Silverwolf, there's only one option as well. You just go Genius. And that's it. If you don't have either... Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, Pen Cosmic can be an option if you are struggling for effect hit rate.
That's true, yeah. Although in most cases, if you're just going like debuff for Silverwolf, you're gonna take either an effect hit rate light cone or effect hit rate chest piece, or maybe even both of them. So usually the extra 10% from Pan Cosmic is not significant enough to really make or break her build. If you happen to have it, it's nice though.
Yeah, but don't go out of your way to get it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, you were saying something first?
What was I saying?
I don't remember. But yeah, those are really like those relics were mainly options if you care about her damage, but being realistic, right? Another big concern is going to be just living with Silverwolf, because aggro values are a lie. Anyone who tells you to believe in them is trying to sell you Kool-Aid. So, it doesn't really matter how much damage she could be potentially doing if you can't survive on her. So, and if you don't care too much about her damage in the first place, if you're literally just bringing her for the utilities that she brings, then there are 2-piece combinations that you can run. Jess, why don't you tell us about them?
Yeah, so if you don't have the other sets, you can you want to build speed and survivability on her. Because the faster she is, the more she can apply debuffs, the more likely she is to act before your damage dealer and apply her debuffs before they act, which is pretty important, especially if you want to like implant weakness, for example. Those sets would be generally Hackerspace 2-piece. And then for survivability, you run Guard 2-piece. If you don't have Guard, you can run Disciple 2-piece or Knight 2-piece. Right, just any sort of combination of them. They're all fine. None of her relic sets, if you're not doing a specific build, are going to impact her performance significantly. So really, you're not losing too much by going 2-piece, 2-piece.
And that was 2 out of the 3 playstyles that I mentioned earlier. Those are generally what you're looking for at free-to-play levels of Silverwolf, E0. S1 maybe being around as sort of, trophy for being a dedicated Silverwolf lover. Now, there is some very fun stuff with Silverwolf if you have the credit card. Who wants to go over this one? Who wants to tell us about the legendary E6 Silverwolf full damage blasting build?
I mean, I think there's only one person qualified for that, isn't there?
Well, I can talk about it. I do have it after all, and I've been playing it for
Yep.
months at this point. Yeah, Eidolons on Silverwolf are pretty interesting. They can basically change her from being only realistically usable as a debuffer to being a full-on hunt unit, essentially. Often killing the enemies she's debuffing before your damage dealer even gets to them, which in some cases is pretty frustrating, actually. So her Eidolons, her E1 gives her extra energy when she hits an enemy with her ultimate based on the number of debuffs they have, scaling up to 5. This can significantly shorten her rotations, allowing for a 3-turn rotation with no additional energy from anywhere else. And if you have certain things like Tutorial Light Cone or Aaron Energy Rope, you can actually get her down to a 2-turn rotation. Her E2 reduces enemy effect resistance by 20%, and this is a non-removable debuff. And it applies before, like, at the battle start, which is super nice because it just reduces the effect hit rate requirements of anyone on the team, including Silverwolf. In fact, it reduces hers enough that she basically doesn't need to build any at all. She'll get enough just from her light cone, her traces, and some random substats. And you don't even have to care about it, which allows her to invest in more damage stats. Her E4 and E6 are also just bigger damage increases. Her E4 adds additional ticks of damage when she uses her ultimate, also based on the number of debuffs the enemy has. And her E6 gives her a 20% damage bonus for every debuff the enemy has that she's attacking, which can stack up 5 times for a massive 100% damage increase. And this actually plays into how you use her, what abilities you use when you're building for damage Silverwolf. So in a lot of cases, if you're building super high Eidolons and you're going for crit Silverwolf, you might even want to use your skill while she's at full energy, because almost all of her Eidolons depend on the enemy having multiple debuffs on them. And this matters so much that it is often better to use her skill on an enemy to apply multiple debuffs before using her ultimate, because the damage increase is so significant. Even though you're losing some energy, E1 also helps recover some of that if you happen to use her skill while she has full energy. I suppose it's worth talking about how significant the damage increase is. I mentioned she basically becomes a hunt unit at E6, and it's pretty much true. Even without any buffs, she can do comparable damage to any of your strong hunt units against a single target. So, for example, my own Silverwolf does 80k ultimates with no buffs. It just happens. And she becomes a potential solo carry option, which is pretty silly. It's not worth it, for sure. Her Eidolons don't actually, they're not going to significantly impact your account, really, because she's single target locked, and there's so much AoE content in the game that it's not going to solve any problems that wouldn't have been solved by doing something different, essentially. by choosing different characters or building differently.
I did want to ask about her E2. Is that just specifically a one-time thing at the start of the battle, or does it
No, that
reapply on
applies
waves?
on every wave. Yeah.
Mm.
So
So it's just
it applies
universally
at the
there, like a
yeah, it's
passive.
just always on no matter what, and it can't be removed. Like enemies sometimes can dispel debuffs on themselves. That one can't
Right.
be removed, which is really nice.
Stonks.
That's pretty big.
So yeah, you essentially have different options at different points of Silverwolf investment, or well, swiping really. You have, correct me if I'm wrong, but E0, E2, and then E6.
Yeah, pretty much. E4 is not worth stopping at. It's
Mhm.
not a significant enough increase to make it really worth anything.
It's something you get along the way to E6, basically.
It's one of those E4. Often in this game, you see a lot of E4s that get better at E6. It's one of those.
Okay, that is an interesting design philosophy that they're using there. We can talk about that at some point in the future. Okay, well, now normally we'd be talking about the character and their, support options, but she is a support option. So let's talk instead. Let's shift track and talk about one very important thing: how Silverwolf interacts with DOT characters. Her partner in crime, Kafka, is the premier DOT character. Sampo. You cannot convince me that this dude is not a Stellaron hunter in disguise. So, who wants to talk about DOT and Silverwolf?
I mean, I can. It's not really a one-man explanation because it does get a little bit finicky. It does kind of cover topics that are a bit complicated because it kind of goes back to the defense ignore thing, the defense shred.
Yeah.
For damage over time characters, at least the way I view it, since they're all since their primary source of damage is a consistent source, they just build attack, read the bottom line. You end up getting a very, very significant benefit from having defense shred on enemies, especially because, at least for the time being, dot characters don't have any really fantastic relic sets of their own, and so many of them also kind of definitely do default to Genius of Brilliant Stars, which means that they benefit even more from the defense reduction that someone like Silverwolf can provide. It ends up having a colossal damage increase, like Guoba mentioned earlier. It's exponential. The more you have of it, the better it is. If you put Silverwolf on a team with Kafka, Kafka has Genius of Brilliant Stars. Your Silverwolf has, I don't know, let's say Resolution shines as pearls of sweat. That is now an incredible amount of defense ignore that Kafka has, and it just destroys everything, and it will continue to do so because of the nature of Dom. There's kind of more to it as well, but it's kind of, I can't really find the words to specifically point out why dot characters are benefit so much from it, aside from the fact that they're just consistent and they really appreciate the extra bump in damage that is already going to be highly consistent.
It probably has a lot to do with debuffs to defense being based on enemy turns rather than your carries turns, like harmony buff units. So it just better aligns with what dot units want to be playing around. That's kind of a very complicated topic, though, especially since that's going to involve talking about speed.
Oof. Everyone's
Speed,
favorite
I pretend
stat.
I do not hear it. I pretend I do not hear it.
PTSD flashbacks to the Speed Wars. Speed
One more-
TC.
One more comment about Dot. The resistance reduction from her skill, both the one that's applied to the type that she implants and also the universal reduction, those do apply to Dot damage as well. So it is a sizable damage increase if you're able to stack all of her debuffs.
Okay. The other thing is, this goes back to Genius. Because Silverwolf has the implant and because she is quantum, she can also work to ensure that you get the other 10% from Genius that you might not always have with certain other options like Pela for defense shred. Honestly, our podcast episodes should always just, they're always just going to end up being, can this character run Genius? Talk about Genius. No Genius? GG, go next.
I will be amazed if there's a character that can't use Genius.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah.
it's
How
always
how
gonna
would you
be.
even design that? Like,
They don't do damage.
they literally, yeah. I mean, we're not talking about supports here. I'm
Valor?
talking
Okay.
DPS character.
They do recruit damage only somehow. Like, what the fuck kind of design
Yeah.
would that even be?
I mean, I think
There
you
is
just
a
have to make a
confirmed-
set
Hold
that's
on.
so much stronger than Genius.
Oh,
That's the only
Go on,
way.
Guoba.
I was just saying, I don't think they showed the deets on the stream, but on the HoloLab post, the set is confirmed as a dot set. So,
Well, yeah, I
Kafka,
mean, once we get
Sampo,
more specialized
stuff
sets, I
on
think
that.
that is part of the problem. Like,
yeah,
a lot of our play styles are relying on still the generalist like element sets, and let's be honest, some of them are really bad. Fire sets.
fire is so
Yes.
bad.
Who designed this? How did
I
they?
want an emblem.
Ooh,
I know,
emblem.
Oh, it would
I'm-
be so good if we had that. I still can't believe that they managed to
How-
How do they manage to design Genius and Firesmith, and they put them side by side and went, yeah, these are
This is
equivalent.
okay. Yeah.
Zila.
No, like
yeah.
my real question is, did someone at some point just mess up and basically swap 4-piece Firesmith with Asta's kit? Because she gives more fire damage just by existing on the field than you'd get from this. It's insane. How does that happen?
You know, that actually might not be super inaccurate because Yukong's imaginary bonus is 12%. So maybe somehow they did flip them and Asta's was supposed to be 12%, and then Firesmith was just like, oh no, something's gone terribly wrong.
The fact that Asta
I
is
know,
more
those
of
numbers
a...
are just too low. Like, how do you do that to a set?
It's not even just that the numbers are too low. The condition is terrible. After unleashing ultimate for the next attack. Like, okay, uptime what?
The thing is, you're double conditional, limited to a single attack, and it only gives you 12%. Like, why bother?
It's insane. It's actually just criminal. Fire characters are not meant to prosper in this game. Maybe it's just a byproduct of Genshin, you know? Fire characters, pyro characters, they're cracked. Maybe they didn't want fire to be the element here. But I think that's
Pyro
enough of
hasn't
a...
been cracked for like 3 versions. That doesn't count.
It's okay. I believe in burn. Burning is the future.
This always happens. Like every single time we go to do these big podcasts, it all boils down to Genius good, Firesmith bad. We should probably get back on topic.
Yeah, I mean, Is there anything else really to talk about here?
We can always just preface these stream topics with, unless we mention otherwise, run genius.
Save us some
Yeah,
time.
we need a new disclaimer below the
disclaimer.
crit one.
Oh
Yeah.
God,
If we don't specify, it's always genius.
guys, my screen is going to end up looking like a Star Wars intro in a
Except it's
podcast
just
far,
genius.
far away. Do not build crit on all of these characters. Don't farm Firesmith. Ah,
Oh my god. In 3 years, it has to be transparent for the stream to be viewable.
it's so over. Okay. Is there anything else we want to talk about with Silverwolf?
We did talk about damage options a bit, but I feel maybe a mention of sustain options could be warranted.
Go on.
So we are about to mention them, but Xuan and Lynx are both quantum sustain options, and since Silverwolf's implant does depend on the weakness, or rather the damage types available in your team, they can significantly increase the consistency of her weakness implant if you structure your team around a couple certain types. So if you run Silverwolf along with Xuan or Lynx, you have quantum only, and then your other two options, you basically have, you can be fully flexible and pick, for example, two characters of the same type, and your sustain option is already covered. So in many cases, you have a lot of freedom with team building. In that case, it's often not the best damage, but it can lead to much more comfortable gameplay if you do want to use Silverwolf.
And it does tie into a common misconception with Monoquantum, right? That was the big thing when Silverwolf was introduced. Everyone thought, hey, Silverwolf, she makes sure that, you always have quantum, the potential to have quantum weakness on the enemy, right? But that's not necessarily why you'd run her, and it's not necessarily a good thing to have, at least right now. Jess, why don't you elaborate on Monoquantum?
Okay. Yeah. There's also another thing I wanted to talk about with weakness implant. So Monoquantum is like, it's kind of a meme, really. It's a team you can run. It definitely works. You can always have a quantum implant when you want it. But in most cases, it's just not as good as other options where you pick harmony characters or a damage dealer that matches the weakness of the enemies you're facing. Monoquantum is just if you want to never worry about not being able to weakness break the enemy. But in many cases, that's like not even necessary. Against a lot of enemies, we have characters that do so much damage that the enemies die before they get broken anyway. So Monoquantum, it's like this cool, funny thing, but it's not this incredible, amazing team that we thought it might be when Silverwolf first released. I also wanted to talk about Silverwolf's single target implant. In many cases, the single target nature of her debuffs is a problem. Like if you're against multiple elites or multiple waves of enemies that like you have multiple tanky enemies in each wave. But if you're just against one elite or one boss that has small adds that a damage dealer could kill without debuffs on them, you're not actually losing as much as you might think from having Silverwolf's debuffs be purely single target. So it does not completely brick her in all situations. It is just something to consider when you're looking at what enemies you're going against.
Fair enough. So realistically, in at least the current game environment, the quote-unquote meta, Silverwolf being purely single target isn't as big of a downside as it might seem at first glance.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a downside, but it's not It doesn't just break a team.
Mhm. No, that's fair. I mean, we're all familiar with the most recent DPS characters, right? The damage dealers that we've been getting. We all joke about it, how destruction is really the true element of the game, but these characters are exceptionally good at just getting rid of weaker side ads that enemies tend to spawn. So yeah, I mean, it definitely is something worth considering. Okay. I think unless anyone wants to interject here, we can move on to the next one. And the next couple of characters we've already covered extensively before, so we won't spend as much time on them. Anyone want to say anything before we leave the Silver Wolf train?
We covered everything. I mean, yeah, she's your single target debuffer. She's great with quantum.
Well,
I was going
don't
to comment
think-
with monoquantum. I think we're just one good unit off. I think the issue right now is no matter what, you're doubling up on something you already have, which is either a sustain in terms of Fuxuan Lynx or a DPS in terms of Seele like Qingque. But like if we get another like a quantum harmony or a quantum nihility, I can definitely see that taking off because I know people want this to happen. And I kind of want it to happen too. It's just that sort of comfortable feeling of never having to look at the enemy weakness again.
I guess, but like, I don't know. I kind of don't want it to be a thing because like, you're trying to play around weaknesses is like the fun part of the game for me. But
I don't see them going that way. So far, they really haven't focused that hard on like a mono weakness type enemy where it's like bring this element or you can't do it. They definitely favor some elements, that's for sure. Ice, cough, cough.
Selfish, you wanted to say something?
No, I was wondering if you touched on what happens when you actually hit 100% effective defense reduction.
No, we covered
Yeah,
that
that's
in a
a
previous
good-
podcast. But yeah, we can go over that real quick.
You're
Oh, I
talking
mean
about Silver Wolf
the basis
because
of it is that it's capped, so you won't get any more. You can't go into a negative defense if like that's what you're asking.
yeah, because
Um,
Silver Wolf is one of the ways to actually hit that cap. So maybe you could talk about it before you go.
No, fair enough.
Alright.
Right. That's definitely something to keep in mind, especially when you're combining multiple defense, which would be the quantum set, Silver Wolf, possibly resolution. This will come up obviously more often if you're running Silver Wolf and Pella together, because just those two will mean you will cap out using the quantum set themselves. Silver Wolf being 45% at max, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Silver Wolf together
hold on.
is 93% defense.
Is
reduction.
93%, which means you
Yeah.
are getting some benefit from your quantum, but you're not getting the full benefit anymore. So you are capping out.
Yeah.
Because we do talk a lot about how defense shred is exponential, and that means the more of it you have, the more valuable it is. But you also have to be careful about capping out, because once you do hit 100% anything, more is just wasted.
Yeah, if you're 100%, that is no different from being at 120%, for example, right? You're not getting any more defense shred there. So just keep that in mind. Again, especially when you're running multiple sources of defense shred. Realistically, it is generally just a concern with Silver Wolf and Pela, and it is going to be like a single target concern because Silver Wolf is again pure single target. But these are some considerations that you want to keep in mind.
Yeah, someone made a TC thought. Let me see. I believe it was
Sky, I think.
Sky
Yeah.
made one about Jinglu, Sig, Pela, Silver Wolf, and Genius together overcapping on defense ignore. In which case, Ice set would be better, but if that's actually the case, congrats, you won the lottery. You have bigger things to worry about.
Damage vulnerability is not defense threat. That's a completely separate multiplier at the end.
But
It's not. It's also not damage percent for people that are. It's just a totally separate multiplier on its own.
So
interesting
sure.
to note though, it doesn't have damage vulnerability specifically doesn't have the same cutoff point as defense threat. So if you do end up, if somehow in future we end up being able to stack damage vulnerability to really, really high
It has
amounts,
no cap as far as we're aware. Like
Yeah,
Also,
it
like
can
cap,
just keep
you
going.
can't
Yeah.
hit it.
it's just a
Right now.
multiplier at the end. So if you do 100, if you have 30%, you just multiply your end damage by 130%. Like,
Can we even reach 100% right now?
No,
I believe
In
there's,
limited
there's what
universe,
we
you
have.
can.
Welt, we have Luca. Who else gives damage vulnerability right now?
Gwen.
Incessant
Snappo
Rain,
forgot.
Gwen,
Guys,
Welt.
guys, one at a
Oh.
time, please. One at a time.
Sorry. Just brainstorming here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
So
it is
I
actually
think
possible to hit the cap because of one specific enemy, so you can observe that cap in action. Because, but like you can't actually realistically hit it, so
Mhm.
it's not something you will need to worry about.
Oh, so they did put a cap on vulnerability?
It does have a cap, though. There's also a bug involved with it, but that's also not
Mhm.
relevant.
So just one of those very edge cases.
Yeah, you can observe it if you have E6 Qingque, otherwise it's impossible to test that cap right
Oh.
now.
That classic unit.
But yeah, you can. The cap can be observed, so it does exist.
Oh.
anything you
What
want to
is
add,
the
Guoba?
cap number?
I didn't know there was a cap. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's the cap itself? Is there a specific number?
Not sure about the exact number. It's because the enemy you can test it on has a value that's above the cap we know. So that's the thing. But it should be, I think it's 250% extra for 350% total.
Yeah, we won't be hitting that soon, I guess.
No,
I think we'll be
definitely
okay.
not gonna
That's
Yeah.
comical. What? Most we can get right now is what?
It would be Topaz.
No, because I was just thinking, but maybe this is a special exception. Doesn't the Doomsday Beast gain, I believe, like 900% vulnerability?
And
in
that's how we
phase two?
know the cap
Yeah.
actually functions, because Qingque does not care about the effect hit rate on his vulnerability, but it does
Oh,
not
I see,
apply
I
to
see.
it.
Wait,
Yeah,
I think
we're-
that
we're-
enemy
we're not
just
getting
can't be
that high.
debuffed though, right?
But
can.
it doesn't use chance, so it does apply, because you can debuff it as long as you don't use base chance.
Right.
Oh, that's fun. That's
I
fun
didn't
to
think
know.
about that.
Yeah, because Topaz can debuff it, then that's bugged with how the thing works for some reason.
Well,
Well,
good to know.
Hoyo, fix it, please. We want our big damage per screenshot numbers.
Yeah,
If you want
no.
that, you don't want them to fix it.
Oh, well, we still have 2 characters to cover. So
Yep. But these ones will be
I guess we
brief.
can jump into Xuan, right? Yep.
Yeah, we've already talked about these two before, in the same podcast actually. But
yeah.
yeah, Lady Xuan, head of the Divination Commission. She's funny character, damage mitigation, damage reduction. Anemone has been summoned because we said Xuan. That's over. That's over.
Hello, Anemone.
Okay.
Hi.
welcome.
Hi,
Nobody say
Emily.
speed.
Okay. Guoba,
We
why
talked-
don't you talk about Xuan? Tell us what she does.
Xuan, you put her in your team, you press skill every few turns, and she makes your team immortal. But what she actually does is, first of all, if you have her skill up, she transfers a portion of damage taken from your allies. Her talent gives the whole team damage reduction, and then she herself can self-heal when she drops under half health, And then her ultimate can heal all allies. So she's kind of just a beast. And yeah, you just don't really die with her.
Yeah, I think that's
pretty
a
much
succinct
it,
way
yeah.
of putting it. She is the premier survivability unit that we have right now.
Well, I'd say she's the premier damage mitigation unit that we have because we also have Luocha.
Sure, but Lucha still has the possibility of someone on your team being one shot.
Oh yeah, that's why I say
Like,
damage
yeah.
mitigation.
Sure. I see survivability as a whole, like, umbrella term that covers kind of healing, like sustain, mitigation, like burst survival, like all the aspects that go into it, like chip damage mitigation. Because she does have everything you really need. And the hardest content, the things that you worry about the most, are like true sting, when you're being one shot, when your whole team is being one shot because you failed to kill the little bugs. Because you're slightly slower than them because they're
Swarm
fast.
moment.
Yes, exactly, the swarm moment, and the number of times my team has survived, my Xuan just shrugs it off and heals back to full. It just goes to show you. But yeah, no, she's great at what she does. I think we covered pretty much all the intricacies of her kit.
Well, we did forget to mention her crit rate buff. The fact that she just gives you crit rate for existing, because you need even more of a reason to have her around.
12%, it's nice.
Yep, and then there's the other important aspect of her kit, just saying fuck you to being CC'd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really the only place she comes up weak is in the cleansing department. I find, like, if I'm up against like someone that's playing wind shear, for example, you tend to die.
Yeah, like stacking dots or just repeated CC. She's really good at dealing with occasional control effects, like in Swarm Disaster, where, in my opinion, she's the single best pull you can have for that content specifically. But yeah, you can feel both her best points and her worst points at the very end. You die to wind shear, or you never died.
Yeah.
It is worth mentioning that since she costs 1 skill point every 3 turns at minimum, that it can restrict team building a little bit in certain scenarios where you have like a really skill-hungry damage dealer, like Dan Hung.
Oh, definitely. I mean, when it comes to being SP positive, you obviously have choices like Lucha that are just completely positive.
Yeah.
And like that is part of it. If you do want to keep up either her CC resist or just her ER, sometimes spamming skill is necessary. So
Yeah.
I do see the SP issues come into her more often than not, especially in harder content. What I find with her is the more she's strained, the more those come up, because the more you're forced to use unoptimal, what I like to call like unoptimal skill usages, using it while your skill's already up, while your matrix is, I mean.
Yeah.
Whether it's for energy, for the CC buff renewal, and so on.
It's also a problem when you have teams that are not necessarily SP intensive, but you have 4 characters who need to spend 1 or multiple skill points to set up. So, like, even with like Jinglu Blade, Bronya, Fuxuan, let's say, because that's something I run before. The team, aside from Bronya, they don't use that much SP, but you have to pay for
But they
it
all use
all
SP
right
on turn
away.
1. That's the issue.
Yeah.
They all want to use SP on turn 1, yeah.
So unless you specifically use technique on Fuxuan every single time, it's going to be a little awkward.
The flip side is that if you do have a team
that is very SP optimized or doesn't need a huge amount of SP, then Fushuen can actually end up having more freedom to use her skill earlier than she would need to, refreshing it earlier for the energy, to keep up with crowd control effects or to get her ultimate back. It's a give and take situation. It depends on your team. What she does is very good, but you may not always need what she does. There are really only a handful of situations, I would say, outside of Swarm Disaster, where the threat of being one-shot is actually tangible. Most of the time, at least for now, I don't want to, I don't want to give MiHoYo any ideas. God knows they don't need any help cooking up some hellish creations, but at the very least, for now, there are alternative options that you can get by with, like, just fine, and you won't need to worry about it.
Unless your name is
Fushuen is that you don't need to think.
unless your name is Tingyun, at which point
Yes.
well,
She somehow dies anyway.
lore accurate Tingyun. I mean, what?
Yep.
I think the last thing to mention is that her buffs, her utility is tied to herself. So, action advance. She doesn't care. Yeah. So we covered that. Building options really quick. Light cones. If you're in the stream and you're looking at the chat, you'll see a mention of a certain light cone. Texture of Memories, very good option. Just if you have if you have Fushuen and you don't have her Sig, get this S5 hit.
She's incredible.
Yeah.
Just it's so good for her.
Fushuen has a fair amount of light cone options. I'd probably say if you don't have Fushuen and you don't plan on getting Fushuen whenever she comes back, if you don't already have her, she's probably the only preservation character that can actually really make use of what texture offers. So you don't really have much reason to go for it outside of that.
Fire MC exists.
Yeah.
There are better options.
I know about that.
Fair enough.
The issue is Fire MC's not really benefiting from the shield of it. Like, it will never happen. So
Unless
it's a little wasted.
The other 4-star options are quite good. You have, the big one is Day One. Day One of My New Life, really, really strong. It's kind of like this and Texture are the two sides where you have Texture Memories to make sure that Fushuen never dies under any circumstances, especially at higher superimpositions. Your basic, like, while that shield is up, Fushuen is immortal. And then Day One of My New Life is to make sure that none of your allies ever die under any circumstances by giving them essentially the same thing that Texture would give Fushuen. They take less damage, and that is a very, very powerful effect that only gets stronger the higher the damage gets. So this is a really, really good option. I would say that if you already have Day One, I would maybe even go as far as to say that unless you're really, really struggling to survive on Fushuen, you could just use Day One if you have better light cones to chase from her to store. But Texture is probably
Yeah,
the best
usually it's
overall.
never Herda that's dying for me in the hardest content. It's Herda. I'm not taking Herda's part. Sorry, I hear Sushou and I just think of Herda. It's
wow, Sushou, you're really slipping up on the Qingque legacy there.
Hey.
We need more Qingque
tall.
legacy. Wow.
Qingque is so not special anymore that now he's known for playing Qingque and Herda.
No, I think Guoba probably is the more well-renowned one for that.
Probably too.
But yeah, no, but as I was saying, I think in the hardest content, it's generally the teammates that I see struggling rather than Fushuan herself. I almost never have her die before a teammate die, which is why I personally prefer kind of the team support, team survivability options.
Yeah,
Which
it's just kind
also-
of personal preference after a certain point.
Yeah, which also brings up the other two options of how did they go together. It's just either Landau's choice or Moment of Victory, which just increases her aggro. Twofold benefit there. Team is avoiding damage and more energy for her. So
The flip side to these is that the increased aggro may actually not be what you want. Sometimes you do want to be benefiting more from the damage redirection portion, which would necessitate your teammates getting hit rather than Fushuan. So this, while it does, guarantee that your teammate, well, not guarantee, but it does significantly reduce the likelihood of your teammates getting hit. And it does also give a large energy influx to Fushuan herself. You then also create a higher energy need for yourself anyway, because you're likely to be you're likely to need more talent procs, which would necessitate more ultimate usages as well.
Should also be
The
noted
thing
that
is-
Fushuan doesn't have inherent aggro mechanics.
Yeah.
You were saying something, Jess?
Yeah, so about Moment of Victory and Landau's choice, I like to say that they have high highs and low lows. If it works, if your Fushuan doesn't just get lasered down by a bunch of single target attacks, and she actually is able to survive, then those are the best light cones for her because your team is taking no damage and she's not dying. However, if she gets hit by too many heavy single target attacks because of the increased aggro and dies, then you're kind of screwed. So those light cones are more niche and that they're less consistent, I would say, than the other three options: her Sig, Texture, and Day One. But they're still really good in a lot of situations.
it's a good way to put it.
I meant inherent aggro mechanics compared to other preservation characters. Because March has increased aggro on shielding, Japard has his bonus trace, etc. Which Fushuan does not have either of. And also, aggro values are a lie.
And then her
Me.
signature as well. Her signature. I don't think we need to say much there besides you have it, use it.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you
It's
everything
very
you
good.
want.
It gives her survivability, it gives the team survivability, it gives the team damage, it gives her ER. It is pretty loaded, honestly, for a signature.
But it isn't necessary. You don't have to get it. It's
No,
good,
no,
but
she
the
has a lot of options, which is nice.
yeah, the other options
in
are
some cases,
pretty
her
good.
Sig isn't even her best.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead and elaborate on that.
Sig, I would classify it as like the most generalist of the choices because it gives you everything, whether it's offensive, self survivability, or team survivability.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly her best generalist option, and sort of it either tops or nearly tops the charts in all situations. However, if you're looking for pure teammate survivability, Day One is going to be better.
Oh yeah.
If you're looking for pure Fushuan survivability, Texture is better. Her Sig offers a nice balance between both. And it's still, I would consider her best light cone. It's just not the best at everything at once.
Alternatively, because the other options are already so good, if you want to invest more in your Fushuan, or swipe more for her rather, you could go for her E1, because they decided that giving an already incredibly defensive unit that gives you crit rate wasn't enough. She also now gives you crit damage. Because reasons.
E1 is great.
E1 is great.
It's just
For
a nice extra
If you ever
buff.
wanted 3 more broken keels,
It's not gonna like. It's probably not gonna like make you clear if you're not already clearing. It's just extra stats, but it's really nice. It's a good buff.
relics.
Ooh, I like.
Guard. Guard.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, she has a lot of 2 set options, right? She can mix and match Longevous, Guard, even Hackerspace. Like,
I actually do like the more niche option of having guard, 2-piece guard and 2-piece passerby.
I run that. Yeah.
oh,
It's
yeah.
it's very. You'd be surprised how many times there's been where I'm like, if I just like it's slightly uncomfortable the amount of healing that I get back, or maybe I need to reach a specific health threshold again for whatever thing. And having the extra outgoing healing from the 2-piece passerby is actually a lot more significant than I thought it would be. I thought it was. I initially looked at it and said, "There's no way this is going to be good," and then it was, and I was wrong. And I'm like, okay, that's fine then. 4-piece guard has the benefit of being like, okay, well, if your Fuxuan is in danger territory and you don't have any talent, if you don't have any talent stacks left, that could be a way for you to survive long enough to get back to a stage where you can get things back to normal. I'd say if you're consistently reaching that point, then that you have bigger problems. 2-piece for the hackerspace,
I like recommending 4-piece guard. It's strange, right? I like recommending it for when your Fuxuan is under geared, basically. And like as you invest in her more, you'll find it's less and less useful. So it's not something you should long term farm for.
yeah. And then there's also the niche option, another potentially niche option, of having 4-piece passerby.
You say niche. You say niche. It is not niche.
It is
And then
niche
was-
because
I'm
the
thinking-
teams that need it. There are teams, we covered it a little earlier where we mentioned that that some teams have a very high SP requirement in like the first turn where everybody wants to use SP, and if you start with 3, you might not have enough for everybody. But if you start with 4, as a result of having 4-piece passerby on your sustain unit, even if it's Fuxuan, you'll actually be surprised how much comfier it can make openings to encounters.
So I do want to say, Sushou, you may not have seen my numbers on this. Turns out, 4-piece passerby, or sorry, just 2-piece passerby is actually better team sustain than 2-piece guard and 2-piece disciple over a long period of turns, right? Like 10 cycles or whatever. I think even at 6 cycles, it actually surpasses. So if your Fuxuan is not dying, is not getting one shot, then 4-piece passerby is actually just straight up her best option because you're getting better sustain than other options, and you also get the extra skill point. This is only for really high investment on your Fuxuan, right? You need to make sure she's not going to die, and the extra damage reduction from guard really helps with that. But if she's not dying without it, then 4-piece passerby is just amazing for her.
The takeaway from this is that Fuxuan does have a lot of options, and I think I should also mention, because Anemone will probably come for me if I don't. Guard is also a really good generalist set for your other characters that you want to not die. And if your other teammates that you want to protect have guard, at least the 2-piece one, not necessarily 4-piece, but even just the 2-piece one, then it makes Fuxuan even better at what she does, because they'll be taking even less damage. And this will then reshift the focus onto making Fuxuan, more survivable, basically immortal, which is then leading again to texture of memories. If you have all of these things, then this is a situation in which 2-piece or 4-piece passerby on Fuxuan suddenly becomes really good because you've solved the survivability issue of your teammates and of Fuxuan. And if something ever actually does go wrong, well, you have the 2-piece effect to give you some extra healing, and you start with an extra skill point, which some teams literally can't open without. It's really good, and Fuxuan has a lot of good options. It's kind of just mix and match between what you have available to you, and while there is an optimal choice based on your teammates, what they're using, and your overall investment level, you can get by with a surprising hodgepodge of things.
Okay. Well, that was enlightening. Almost enlightening as having access to the matrix of. How do you even pronounce that?
Prescience.
Prescience? I don't like that
Prescience.
word. It doesn't sound as cool as I think it should. English, am I right?
English.
Okay. Moving on. Planars. I don't think there's, too much to talk about here. Who wants to take over for this one? Guoba, do you want to talk to us about her Planars real quick? What do we want
Yeah.
to run?
Why not? So, obviously, in South Sato is her best as a main DPS fish one.
Okay.
Enjoy.
Goodbye,
Okay, no,
Guoba.
it's fleet
Goodbye,
or kill.
Guoba.
It's I'll see you.
Guoba's banned.
Bad. It's fleet or kill depending on. I mean, the HP is nice, but the attack percent is not going to be as good as another bunch of crit damage from kill, and she does like the effect resistance. I find there's wind shear or HP reduction enemies. They are a big pain for her, so having F-res on her is actually quite nice. So it's one of those. I don't think Von Wack does any energy rotation, so I wouldn't recommend that.
Her energy is kind of cursed.
It is very cursed.
It's worth mentioning that Fleet is better in dot teams because they don't
Yeah.
scale with crit. But that's pretty much the only situation where you would
You don't
prefer-
run Krika.
Guoba. We're going to have a long talk after this stream.
Oh,
A very...
got found dead.
Step into my office, please.
Yeah, I mean, technically, Fuxuan, because of the crit rate that she provides through her skill and crit damage if you have E1 on her, she's technically not designed sort of for dot teams, but like she is still a sustain unit. Her main role is keeping you alive. You can definitely use her in those scenarios. Just please don't get baited into thinking, oh my god, I have Fuxuan on my team. That means I can build crit on Kafka. I will come for you.
12% crit rate definitely makes Kafka
Surely.
crit viable. Surely.
12% crit.
What
by
if
the
I
way.
have E1 Sushou? Does that make it work?
No. So,
True.
yeah, it's if you are going for a dot setup, then Fleet is going to be better because your dot teammates can actually utilize the attack percent compared to the crit damage. But in all other cases, Keel is Keel.
Well said.
Thanks, I
Heck.
practiced.
He sits there in front of the mirror, looks at himself for a long time. Okay. Anything else we want to talk about before we move on? We've already covered a lot of this stuff before, but it is good to have a quick refresher course. Okay. Speaking of refresher courses, let's refresh ourselves with the third Landau sibling. Lynx Lendau. Lynx is our latest abundance character, and honestly, she's really everything that you need to have in an abundance character to survive. Luocha is great, but he is just overkill. The dude does so much. Realistically, Lynx is more of a baseline for what an abundance character should be doing.
Or Natasha.
Dude, I was so in love with Natasha, but as the game grew, just she just stopped being enough. And that's an E6 Natasha. It's painful. Lynx just has
It's-
so much utility that Natasha doesn't. You're gonna say something,
Yeah.
Reens?
For me, no, yeah, for me, it's not even the utility for Natasha. I just find her raw healing not enough for the situations I need her in. Like that's my main. I think her utility is fine personally. She has her cleanse. She has her heal over time. She has her emergency panic button heal on ult. She's generally an SP positive unit. It's just she does not heal enough.
And the other thing is that her cleanse is single target and tied to her skill, which can be fine for some cases, but it doesn't beat the sheer utility of having just an AoE cleanse on ult. In addition to her E2 just being like, yeah, I'm not gonna get CC'd in the first place. Giga Chad.
Yeah, Lynx has a lot of things that make her a desirable pick, especially for people who have not been able to obtain a second sustain unit, right? Because everybody by default has Natasha, but that's it. They've not been very generous with the other ones. So if you don't have Japad, if you don't have Luocha, if you don't have Fuxuan, Lynx is going to be a colossal improvement over those three. Over Natasha by a significant margin, and she can kind of even reach a point where she can almost function as kind of like a light version of Luocha. Her talent healing is a big selling point. Being able to apply a regen to everyone with her ultimate, or on all healing that she does, is really good because it also lasts 3 turns with her. I think it's her third bonus ability.
A6, yeah.
This contributes a lot of passive healing over time, and it can very easily deal with chip damage, quote unquote, where you take kind of small hits here and there, small AoE hits across the entire team, or maybe you have some light damage over time effects. Lynx can pretty much nullify that without even trying. And we already mentioned it briefly. Her biggest selling point is her ultimate having a cleanse on it for all allies. There are so many situations where just having that one thing arguably makes her the best choice for that situation. Yeah, there are cases where with Fuxuan you can avoid getting crowd controlled in the first place. If you have Luocha, he does have his little emergency heal that he does that will also cleanse the person it's healing. But here's the thing, Lynx can also remove non-crowd control things with that cleanse. So while Fuxuan can prevent you from being entangled, imprisoned, frozen,
Wind
or
shear.
enraged, exactly. If you're affected
Yeah.
by, 5 stacks of wind shear because you're fighting everyone's favorite, the Ascended enemy, she can remove that wind shear instantly. Gone. Not a problem anymore. You've got your max health reduced? Not a problem. Simply ult with Lynx. Gone. Fixed. And this makes her a very valuable choice. Of course, her skill also makes her very good in specific team comps with certain destruction characters, and if you're running a double sustain team for whatever reason, maybe it's optimal in whatever situation you have, preservation units. If Lynx uses her skill on a preservation or destruction character, then they, in addition to all the benefits that she normally gives with her survival response thing, which is increased max health and stronger healing over time from her talent, she also increases their likelihood of being targeted by enemies. Really, really good for Clara and Blade. Really, really bad for Imbibe Lune or Arlen. So be careful who you use it for, because it may have adverse effects. But even just in a pinch, using this on somebody, the upfront healing is very high. The increased healing over time from her talent as well, due to survival response, can make, well, teammates that are basically on the brink of death come back in a single turn.
Sushou, I noticed you didn't mention Jinglu there. What's up with that?
Who?
Hey,
Um,
banned. Goodbye. Get out of here.
No. It's okay. For Jinglu specifically, Lynx has both the positive and the negative come up, where if you use her ultimate to apply her talent regen to everybody, then this very easily offsets the health siphon that Jinglu does with her enhanced skill, or her ultimate when she's in her spectral transmigration state. But if you have to ever directly heal Jinglu, you will also increase her aggro, which you probably don't want. So you need to be a bit careful here and there.
That's actually a good thing in certain cases. Like
Oh,
Jinglu has
don't
this...
come at me with the energy.
Look, it matters though. Look, okay. If you get
Missing
unlucky enough,
that 3 energy can be so painful.
yeah, it's true. Like the aggro increase can actually help Jinglu get full energy because she's just missing like 5 energy, right?
It's
So in certain
doomed.
cases where you are running Lynx with Jinglu, it can be worth it to skill her for the extra energy.
Yes, I
But
suppose
it's not
it
that
can.
not that big of a deal.
Yeah, Lynx does have some pretty good utility in that regard, and she is definitely a market improvement over Natasha. She doesn't reach the heights of the limited 5-star sustains, I don't think. I think pretty much all of them, actually, even Japad, I would say, in certain situations can be a better choice. He naturally draws aggro. His shield is big, McLarge, huge. It's good. I would probably say Lynx is better than Bailu, though, and that's a little sad for the small dragon lady.
Can you wait till like next week so I can get my Bailu guide out?
Oh, no. That's stealing content out from under him. S&E.
Okay, fine. I respect the hustle.
Just you can cool Bailu trash in like 1 week and I'll be chilling.
Oh
I'm
no!
not gonna say anything of the sort. I'm simply going to mention that Bailu is, I believe, the only abundance unit in the game right now that does not have any way of applying cleanse to
Only
allies.
1 out
Not
of 3.
entirely true, because revives
Yes, you
remove
can revive.
debuffs.
Oh,
Revive.
my
It is something that is
It is a
potentially
Brain
worth.
right there.
It is something that is potentially worth bringing up though, because she is also the only person that can like bring someone back from the dead.
true.
Xuan E2?
She got Eidolons, yeah.
I would say,
Yeah, that's fair.
If you're
Hard
finding
here.
yourself, finding use from Bailu's revive, then again, you have bigger problems.
You probably lost already. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those cases where it's probably not going to help you. Like, it's probably already doomed.
Yeah, if you've died once, there's nothing stopping you from dying again.
Listen. When the bugs explode at you in swarm disaster,
Yes, I'll have you guys know that
Yes.
I did actually manage to trigger Japard's talent and win one time.
Now, Japard's talent is different because his actually makes sense.
The thing
He's
is,
the one
he's
getting
the most
hit.
likely to die. Like, yeah, he's getting hit. He wants to die. With Bailu, if your DPSs are dying, what's going to stop them from dying a second time?
Okay, I'm being generous here. I'm just being facetious earlier. I don't. It making more sense does not mean it's good. I think it doesn't make sense.
I like it. Look, I'm not saying like it has its uses. It like in, for example, Swarm Disaster, where a DPS going down could be bad, like run ending. Bringing them back is good.
Okay.
The other point, though, is that, like, you can't control who you're bringing back. Me when my
Yeah.
DPS and Tingyun die and she brings back Tingyun. What am I supposed to do now?
I'll
Can be
rectify.
harder, but
Sorry,
Bailu-
Guoba, we're killing that video. Before-
Okay, I tried. Okay, I did try. You saw.
It is what it is at this point. I mean, I
Wait,
have
wait,
to go
wait,
before Hua.
True.
No, I'll rectify my statement. Bailu is the only abundance healer right now that does not have a targeted, purposeful cleanse.
There you go.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
And that's all we're
She
saying
has
about
damage
Bailu. Moving
reduction,
on.
though.
What if I apply increased aggro to one of my characters?
Oh
and
my
they
god.
get
Okay,
buffed?
Jazz, shut up. Okay,
True.
you're banned. Goodbye.
You're this. Can I leave?
It's
no,
so
but,
over.
Lynx does have a lot of benefits in that regard, and especially having the talent regen, depending on how invested your Lynx is, this is a very significant amount of healing that you get over time without really needing to do anything. And because she's an abundance unit, she has access to probably like the best, like one of the best light cones in the game.
If you
which
say
is
quid pro quo.
multiplication.
Okay. I was about to
Man,
I was about to
multiplication,
leave.
gang.
I was about to leave because I
You
am
should know
so
better by now.
I am so sick and tired of hearing quid pro quo. Just get me out. Get me out. Get me out. Get me out. Get me out.
No. Quid pro quo has its uses, I guess, but like it's a case of if it's making a significant difference to you and your team isn't super duper ultra optimized, then again, you have other problems you need to fix first. Multiplication is so damn good. It's so damn good because we always talk about how strong action advance is and how powerful even just small quantities of it can be. This gives you a 20% turn advance every time you basic attack, which ideally is the only thing that you're going to be doing, or most of the time you're going to be doing. Because of this, you get more turns, which means you get more energy, which means you get more ultimates, which means you get to maintain the regen even more, and you also get to have the cleanse on demand. And because you get more turns, you also generate more SP for the rest of your team. It's so good. It's so good. I have 3 S5 multiplications.
Same.
Yeah,
Day one
I'm in
multiplication,
that
Joe.
camp. I'm multiplication pilled so hard.
Oh,
It's not even funny how
Cogs
good it is.
inspection. How many cogs you got?
Oh, Cogs inspection. Oh, buddy.
Oh,
Buddy,
no.
Two.
you don't know. Does he know, chat?
Sushou is the king of cogs, you know?
So I have
Please tell me you don't have 5.
7.
Oh my
Oh
god.
my god.
I have 7
Okay.
S5 cogs.
Bruh, we don't even have 7 harmony characters.
We tied
But
on the
we
cogs.
will.
He's preparing.
Yeah. Multiplication really is just that good. And because this isn't a character that's really going to be dealing damage, you don't really care too much about the stats. But the base HP is actually okay. The base defense is a bit. Don't look at the defense.
We don't talk about that.
We don't talk about the defense, but the base health is actually comparable to the free-to-play 4-star version, the equivalent, which is Quid Pro Quo. At 952 base health, it's actually on the higher end. And because Lynx is exclusively a HP scaler, this means this means that you just get all of the benefits of multiplication without having any of the potential downsides. Again, don't look at the defense. It's fine. Just don't worry about it.
You say she is a pure HP scaler. Does that mean I can run time waits for no one? Please, let me run this. Please. Please.
Time Waits for No One is a good stat stick if you have it, but you just know how dire it is when you're presented with a 5-star light cone option and 3-star multiplication, and I'm looking at multiplication like, it's probably you. It's like that meme of like, Mom, who's your favorite child? Oh, I love you both equally. And then Time Waits for No One runs away, and me to multiplication, it's you, and by a lot.
Eris' soul just breaking in half by this.
Okay, but hold on. We just said Lynx is pure HP scaling. Does that mean I can build crit on my Lynx?
Get out.
Yeah.
Now,
You know what
yes,
to do. You know what
her
to do.
basic attack isn't an attack scaling one. Lynx's basic attack scales with her max health, just like Xuan's. It goes up to 50% of her max health. Don't. Please. I beg of you. You don't have the stats to sacrifice. Because ideally you want to be stacking as much health as you possibly can. Or even just like other defensive stats like effect res defense, because if Lynx dies, well, guess what? So does everyone else. Well, actually, what actually happens is that you press escape and then you click restart. But
Which is going to
The more
become a
health
lot
you-
easier starting next patch. Haha.
which
I
is going to
can't
become a
wait
lot
for
easier.
that. Oh,
Quality
long
of
overdue.
life. Especially for resident Qingque players.
I've never had this issue. Have you, Guoba?
I just, fuck it, we ball.
Yeah, it's exactly. Fuck it, but you.
Am I the
don't
only one that's
channel-
turbo unlucky with Qingque? Me
You might
spending
be.
all my 5 skill points and still somehow not getting the
It
fucking
happens to me
enhanced.
too. It happens to me a lot.
They're not real Qingque mains. This doesn't happen for real
Hey,
Qingque mains.
no gatekeeping here. That's my job.
Yeah.
That's
true,
my
true.
job.
I mean, what?
You're not cool enough to be in here.
Oh man.
That is only half true.
Yeah, it's true. You're already in here. You're still not cool enough though.
Maybe one day.
Anyway, going back to her light cone options.
Yes, because she has, because she does want a lot of health. Because everything that she does scales with health, and her actual values are quite good on even just the talent healing. It sounds like it's not a lot. Because it kind of isn't. But once you have a lot of health, then it's like, okay, now it's significant. And with other light cones, yeah, like we mentioned, multiplication is it's literally number one. I don't think it's even arguable. Quid pro quo is a good option for if you did an oopsie and somehow deleted all of your multiplications. Or if you have a very very specific team composition where you can actually make use of the extra energy that it gives. This can also tie back to characters like potentially Seele, who, is going to be acting quite a lot and is going to be acting frequently. And so this actually could end up being quite effective on her. Or alternatively, for a unit like Qingque, who has a very high max energy count of 140, meaning that she's going to be below 50% for longer and can subsequently benefit maybe more than once from Quid Pro Quo. Warmth shortens cold nights.
Oh my
This, please don't. I have a visceral hatred for this light cone because it's such a bait. It like you look at it and you think, oh, Lynx is on it. That must mean it's for Lynx. And it's like, Maybe, but I mean, at S1, 2% of everyone's max health. Actually, scratch that. S5,
Nah, bro, even at S5,
4%.
Yeah.
Or is it 6? Is it 4% or
Four,
6%?
it's
They're
4%.
4. It does not.
Okay,
scale.
it's 4% of everyone's max health. If again, if this is significant for you in any way, we need to talk.
but Sushou, it works perfectly with Jinglu.
I'm going to commit.
Are you saying I wasted 5 battle passes for this Lycan?
No, that's fine. You have the 32% max HP bonus. Clueless.
Okay,
True.
It's
True.
pretty OP.
HP
It is,
scaling.
yeah.
Remember, HP.
I use it.
scaling.
I use it for my crit links since she's a HP scaler.
Based.
That 10,000 damage per cycle really kicking it up a notch.
It does shave a few actions off. Yeah.
I am going to retire.
At a bonus of 32% extra HP, and especially because this does have a slightly increased, the Lycon itself has an increased base HP at 1058 compared to even Quid Pro
952.
Quos. Yeah, 952. This does actually end up being fairly significant, and if you do, by chance, get some useful damage stats as substats, then Lynx's basic attacks can end up being.
Yeah, they do
I don't
600
wanna call them-
damage instead of 400. Like,
Yeah, I don't want to call them significant, but they're not. They become less insignificant.
opium.
Perfect timing is a pretty good honorable mention, I think, because and again, especially if you have it at S5, you can end up getting a lot of effect resistance, and that can be very, very useful because, especially for Lynx, the character who has the AoE cleanse, it would be most upsetting, to put it lightly, if she is the one who is unable to act.
Swarm disaster moment.
I can
Um,
vouch for perfect timing. I run it on my own links, and I have 100% effect res, and it is so comfy.
It's a very comfy thing. The only issue is that it is gacha exclusive, which is like the big
Yeah.
downside to it. But having an extra bonus to outgoing healing in addition to that is also very, very nice. It's a great option if you have it. And then the others are just kind of like filler. Like, shared feeling is
I like shirt feeling.
fine.
It
It
makes
can
my heels
be-
big.
It can be nice. Post-op actually can be pretty significant in certain situations where you meet specific energy thresholds, because it might save you a turn from getting her ultimate.
If she uses her skill once per 3 turns.
Yeah,
right?
you can get 3
Yeah,
turn
3
ults
turn.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, if you really need the healing, like in a tough situation, it can make the difference.
Mm. And I think this is actually something else worth touching on. Natasha has while we're kind of saying that her healing overall is lower than what Lynx can do, Natasha does have the benefit of having the lowest cost ultimate in the game right now at 90 energy. 90 energy is not hard to get. And depending on how you min-maxed your Natasha, it is very possible to get extremely frequent ultimates on her. Potentially even more frequent than other characters. Lynx's ultimate isn't that much more expensive at 100, but it is an unfortunate significant shift in various thresholds to meet that sort of thing. So yeah, she's flexible. Just use multiplication.
Unless you have
160 speed multiplication.
Unless you have what?
Oh, I was gonna say, unless you have S5 perfect timing, that's another option that I'd recommend for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
for
would
sure.
recommend it over, actually. If you have S5 perfect timing,
Yeah.
I would prefer it personally.
you.
Especially since Lynx, in most of her best teams, she doesn't basic attack on every turn, which means she's not always getting the full benefit of multiplication.
Yeah.
That's
It's not a
true.
huge
That's
deal,
true.
but
Yeah.
it does make perfect timing a slightly better option at high superimpositions.
Speaking of teams, we kind of briefly talked about this a little bit earlier, but something that I did want to say is because her healing is turn-based, right? When a character pops up, faster characters, like, say, I've personally had this happen before, and it sucks, but like, because of how quick Seele is, she can end up wasting the heal, kind of.
Is it proc on extra turns?
Well,
No.
no, just
No,
it's
okay.
because of her already inherently high speed and the fact that she also has her her A6.
Yeah, it's just a raw speed
Right,
boost.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be an issue sometimes. Another example is Jinglu with the action advance, but that one is less likely because generally you
I guess
are
it just
playing your
depends on
team
how
around.
you use the heal, right?
Yeah.
Like if
But
you're
it is a possibility.
if you're already topping off, like with just her ultimate, for example, then I can definitely see that being an issue. But if you just have like a little bit to go, no, it can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because it also means you just cycle through her hot, I guess, heal over time faster.
The Snow
how that
Explorer. The Snow Explorer has the.
Oh no.
Yeah, you just cycle through that faster.
But yeah.
New meme.
Anyway, Jess mentioned her best teams, and what is it? Two teams are her best teams. Do you wanna bring those up real quick?
Oh, I'm assuming you're referring to Blade and Clara.
Yes. Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Baldi and
yeah,
Clara.
she's great with both of them. She gives them both exactly what they want. So for Blade, right, Clara gives him
Lynx.
additional HP.
Lynx, not Clara.
What?
You
Did I say something wrong? My bad.
You said
Yeah,
Clara gives him.
We all
Oops.
know. We all
Yeah.
know what he meant.
I mean,
yeah,
Clara
yeah.
Blade is a good, legit team.
I'm gonna ignore that. Yeah, so Lynx's skill gives Blade everything he wants. Gives him extra HP, and his damage scales mostly on HP. It gives him extra aggro, so he gets hit more, which means he takes more damage, which increases his ultimate damage. He also builds up stacks for his talent faster. It's just an amazing synergy overall. You do have to watch out if you're running Blade, Lynx, and Bronya together, because Bronya advances Blade's turns so frequently. It'll make Lynx's buff expire faster. It only lasts 2 turns, so you have to be pretty careful with like team ordering if you're running those 3 characters together. But even so, it's still a really good synergy. For
Also,
Clara,
with that
it's
specific team, you really struggle to keep up the SP. Actually,
that's true. Yeah, you kind of need E1 S1 Bronya if you really want to keep that going, like indefinitely. But yeah. For Clara, she gets almost, or arguably sometimes even more from Lynx than Blade. So Clara's damage doesn't scale in HP, but Clara does want to get hit, so she still benefits from the HP because it's additional tankiness. Additionally, the aggro is extremely helpful for her, especially when you're running Clara without Tingyan, which could very well happen if you're running Tingyan on the other side in MOC or something. Because she gets hit more, which means more energy, which means her ultimate comes back faster, and it's just a nice feedback loop there as well. Additionally, the cleanse from her ultimate can help Blade and Clara immensely, because if they get crowd controlled, they lose a lot of their damage.
Clara.
That's about it for their synergies.
Yeah. Lynx is really what is everything March wanted. It, Lynx is everything Clara wanted from March, but with extra bonuses, with extra benefits.
For sure. Yeah.
Um. Oh right. We forgot about those earlier, but just real quick, building options. Relics. Nothing
Lynx?
crazy here. Yeah, for Lynx, nothing crazy here. Passerby, 2-piece or 4-piece, depending on the team.
Yep. Always.
And then 2-piece disciple, 2-piece guard, 2-piece hackerspace. Just mix and match depending on your needs. Really, not much else to say there. Planars again, keel, especially if you're running perfect timing. It's just
Yeah,
it's
Arena's
free.
great if you're doing DPS links.
Mhm.
I'm fine. I am sane. I am not going. You guys are not going to find Jess's body in a ditch somewhere. I promise. You're not going to find his
Lynx's
body in the
planers
first
are
place.
Don't
Lynx's
worry,
planers
you'll
are
find
basically
mine.
the same as Fushwen, right?
Yeah.
You run keel unless you're in a dot team, and then you run fleet.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
That's really all there
that's
is
kind
to
of
it.
becoming the general support sense
Yeah.
for.
But yeah, that's really all there is to it. Anything else that we want to mention? I think Sushou wanted to, or not Sushou, Soulfish wanted to talk about her Eidolons.
Not necessarily. It's just they exist. I guess they're.
We did touch upon this earlier, but her E2 is really nice. Just the ability to resist a debuff in addition to her alt cleansing. It makes it a lot more comfortable to not get RNG CC'd or die to wind shear, for example, because her alt does remove one debuff. So there is like if you are getting multiple sources of debuffs, multiple sources of DOT, CC, etc. You can still not cleanse the one that you really want to. So this does help. Her E4, it's a little bit of an attack buff. It's
But it
nice,
only
but
lasts one.
yeah, it's nice to have, but it's not really doing anything insane for you. Her E6 is the other one. Soulfish, why
Her
don't you?
E6 is like I've just seen a lot of people, I guess, misinterpret what it does because
Hoya wording.
it's just where it says and increases effect rest by 30%. It's sometimes easy to read it as it increases Lynx's effect rest, but it actually just buffs survival response by that amount too.
Mhm.
But yeah, paired with her E2 is just really nice to resist debuffs in general, since especially when you use it on Lynx herself too, right? Because you can't use her ultimate if she's controlled. So having on top of your like keel everything, you can often actually hit 100% effect resistance too.
Yeah, especially with perfect timing. That's she's very strongly considering that at E6, in my opinion. I would too if I had it, but just
True. Especially since enemies often have, or all of them actually have repeated patterns. So if you can like know when you should skill yourself to avoid something to be able to ultimate, for an example.
Indeed. Cough,
Mhm.
Kafka, cough. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really all there is to it. Unless anyone wants to add something here real quick.
What your wording, please, I guess.
Hoyo,
Yeah.
please invest in better translations.
They won't.
They definitely need to, because hit and attack is not the same thing, and they use them interchangeably.
Yeah.
God, that bothers me so much.
But yeah, I mean, I think this is where we can wrap things up for the official podcast. We can start the Q&A section here. That being said, there is one more thing. We do have one express pass to give away, so you guys know the drill. All you have to do is say something in the chat when I give you the go-to. Okay, hold on for the green light. But yeah, so the way we do these giveaways is all you have to do is say something in the chat, and you will be automatically entered. Starting from now. If you do happen to win, I will DM you, and I will need your UID, your Discord tag, and optionally your server. Someone will contact you if you win, so please sit there and be patient. These giveaways are sponsored by our friends over at Paimon's Bargains. They're a third-party service that helps you find the best deals for in-game related purchases. So, passes, BPs, swiping, if you need to. And they do this by utilizing regional pricing differences to give you some pretty big discounts, all things considered. Definitely do check them out. Use the command !PB and head on over to their Discord server for more details. I'll keep this open for a couple of minutes while we answer some questions. The Q&A section won't be too long today. We have been going for almost 4 hours now, so I think we can do 10 minutes or so. Unless there are just no questions. Haha. Then we just leave. We go home early. Okay. Any questions in the chat? Watch there be not a single question and we just leave.
No
I'd be okay
questions
with
in
that.
15 seconds. We're legally allowed to leave, right?
Yep, true.
Well, I would wait a bit because there is an ad running right now.
Oh, right.
God damn. Ad moment.
Beautiful
timing.
timing. So it's almost like it was planned.
Clueless. KQM rigged stream.
Well, looks like nobody's asking us any questions.
I'm free.
Oh, damn it. We did get
Well,
one.
first question: how much crit should you build on Lynx? Eris, I think
Okay,
this one goes
here,
to you.
okay, here. Do me a favor, okay? You know how every character has 5% crit rate and 50% crit damage? I want you to take that 5% crit rate and get rid of it, okay? If you have any amount of crit rate on your Lynx, you have too much crit rate on your Lynx, okay? Same thing for your Fushwan, just 0. I don't care if you already have 5, I don't care if you can't get rid of it, 0. And if not, I will find you.
What he actually means is 50 to 100 crit ratio. She doesn't have crit traces or crit light cone there.
If 50% of the time you're critting with Lynx, you're doing at least like a little bit more damage, I guess.
Okay,
Should
couple.
she always have 60% crit damage because she's running kill?
True.
Okay.
Surely that makes crit worth it.
Memes aside, we do
True.
have a couple more questions. 2 pieces for Silver Wolf. Damage like Pan Cosmic or support like Broken Kill? Realistically, it depends on what kind of Silver Wolf you're running. Jess?
Generally, kill would be the recommendation. Because that, I mean, right. If you have like high Eidolon Silverwolf, then you go Salsato. If you have low Eidolon Silverwolf, then you go Keel. Pan Cosmic is just like there's not really a situation where it's worth going for because she has enough effect hit rate from Trace's main stats light cones that the 10% is not that important, and like stacking attack on her at E0 is not really worth it. You can do it if you want to like have fun with it, but it's not her best way to play at low Eidolons.
Yeah, low Eidolons, your priority is just staying alive. Staying alive. Or you're running break effect.
Oh, looks like we have another question about Von Wack and tutorial.
Hold on, there was another question first.
Oh, yeah, please
Should
try.
should I run my Fush one with HP percent rope if I have her signature?
No, you should not. So
Go
I actually did
energy.
the calcs on this one. ER rope is always better by a pretty significant margin, no matter what. Even if you have S5 of her Sig Light Cone, it's just going to be more sustained for herself and more sustained for the team. If she's getting one shot and you have her Sig, there's a different problem going on. So generally, you just always want energy rope on her.
Okay, I'll be pulling the winner now. If you win, please reply in a timely manner. Otherwise, I will be rerolling and I will not care. Okay, here we go. Du-du-du-du. Ooh, a regular has won. Ayo win. Are you alive? You Elvin. Oh, there you are. Okay, excellent. I will be DMing you. Du-du-du, du-du-du, du-du-du. Excellent. Okay. Now, we did have some more questions. Let me see. You're right. Von Wack with tutorial. Guoba,
Yeah.
why don't you...
Oh.
Let's give this one to Guoba.
Sure.
So Jazz was saying earlier that you can't use it. You can technically use it, and it will do the 3-turn rotation. The only problem with it is you need to be clutch on the... you need to have that defense shred for the tutorial procs every single time if you want Von Wack to make the 3 energy. It can make it though. But yeah, energy rip is much safer, much comfy if you're just going for a supportive Silver Wolf. But yeah, I've recommended Von Wack in my guide because it does work for that tiny bit of energy that she wants. Or you just go energy rip and not care about hitting defense shred on every hit.
Yeah, the other benefit is like if you're running Von Wack and tutorial, she's not doing any damage, right? So getting the it's not that important to have a rope other than energy at that point. Like I guess if you're going for break Silverwolf, there's a consideration, but you could also just run 4-piece thief.
Yeah,
for
and
the
that gives the
extra
3
3
energy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the answer is no.
Yeah. Not really.
Yes, and
Yeah.
What if you need Silverwolf to go really quickly so that you land her implant?
just build more speed.
You can't just say
It
build more
should be
speed.
fast.
Yeah, I mean it's I suppose a niche option in that case. Like you can do it. It's fine.
I say build more speed, but like I'm pairing her with Sally, and good luck.
Oh, well, I mean,
I think
E2.
Eris means for the first turn advance.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
for just a setup. I
It's
done it.
fine
I've
because
done it
like the
too.
other planar options for her aren't that significant. So like if you really want to like do some hyper optimized first turn setup thing, you can do it. It's fine.
I feel like you lose too much though by not going either fleet or keel. Like it's just so much. The trade off is you lose an extra 10% crit damage for the entirety of the fight versus having to basic attack on Seele once at the very beginning.
Yeah. It's one of those really hyper optimized if you're essentially speed running and you're already clearing in very few cycles. Like
Yeah.
this
Like,
was
if you-
this applied more back when like Mach had the had the waves where you could realistically do like a cycle 0 clear. Now it's not quite as relevant.
It's a lot harder to do those types of things now.
Yeah.
If you're running Break Effect Silverwolf, is it worth playing around with offensive stats or just full tank aside from Break, EHR, and Speed? This is the part. This is the part where someone answers.
Yeah, you just go tank, I think.
Yeah, there's just kind of no value. Like it's already been mentioned. Even at like mid Eidolon levels, you're still not going to be doing any kind of like significant damage with Silverwolf, and she's really there for specific reasons that she can't fulfill if she's dead.
Yeah, it is very hard to get the critical mass of offensive substats to make going crit worth it, or even just get a lot of break effect in the first place, just because of her wanting EHR speed and enough tank to live. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of a lost cause.
Yeah.
You end up needing
Pre
too many stats, and you just can't.
pre
realistically
too, I
get
just
'em.
don't think it's like viable to go like a crit rate body. You'd have to get very lucky with like your substats to get that like enough.
I'm
doesn't run a crit rate body.
okay, I'm gonna say I am one of those people that actually could run like E0 DPS Silverwolf with like enough hit rate, but I swapped it off for a tank because like realistically I'm not getting that much benefit from the damage, but it makes her so much more susceptible to just randomly dying because an enemy was pissed off at her winning in a video game or using gamer words. So I swapped her off to tank, and honestly, like I'm not feeling that much of a difference in terms of like clear speed, but it is a lot more comfortable. Now it is an option to run Silverwolf for damage at even E0, right? But again, it's only really worth it if you're not dying. Because if you die, it doesn't matter how much damage you can do, not gonna be doing any of it.
I would only seriously consider crit Silverwolf actually good at E6. Even at E2, she just doesn't have enough self-buffing to make it like worth running. Sure, she'll do some damage. It's just not. It's not enough to really make the clear difference.
Yeah. But I think on that note, we can call it a day here. We are at 4 hours now, so I think we can just wrap it up. Thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it was informative. If you guys liked these non-character focused podcast episodes, please let us know. We might try to do more of these later. Just talking about different game mechanics and stuff, not necessarily elements. But yeah, thank you to everyone that joined in today, for all of these guests. We had a fair few more than we normally do. But yeah, hopefully it wasn't too hectic. Yeah, tune in next time for the day one. I think she's first. It should be in about a week and a half.
The 15, so about 10 days, yeah.
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 So yeah, definitely tune in, and who knows? Maybe we'll kidnap Guoba more often for these. Definitely big shout out to Guoba for being here today. Make sure you check out his videos, his guides. They're very informative and they're very helpful.
Yep. Thanks for stopping
Thank
by,
you.
Guoba.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you
thanks
for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Guoba.
Always a pleasure. But yeah, signing off here. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
So for everyone that missed parts of it, this will be uploaded on YouTube, so don't you worry.
Yep.
We already said bye.
And if
Still some
if you
people in
can't
chat,
wait,
it's
if you
fine.
can't wait for it to be uploaded on YouTube, the VODs are always available on the Twitch channel that you can watch. But yeah,
Bye for
That-
real.
indeed.
Bye
Adios.
again.
Good night.